This is Audible.
Diet Recovery: Restoring Hormonal Health, Metabolism, Mood, and Your Relationship with Food by Matt Stone. Narrated by Matt Stone. Copyright 2011, 180 Degree Health, LLC. Produced by Archangel Inc. Disclaimer: the material provided here is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. The information contained in this book should not be used to diagnose or treat any illness, metabolic disorder, disease, or health problem. If you have developed a serious illness of some kind, the complexities of dealing with that disorder are best handled by your physician or other professional healthcare provider, whom you should also consult with before beginning any nutrition or exercise program. Use of the programs, advice, and other information contained in this book is at the sole choice and risk of the reader. About Matt Stone. Hi, I'm independent health researcher Matt Stone. I'm not the omniscient knower of all things, but I've spent the better part of the last decade immersed in the field of health research. And in that time, I've made some key discoveries that are urgently needed by literally hundreds of millions of dieters worldwide. What's emerged as my specialty over the course of my research, which has involved thousands of studies, over 300 books spanning an entire century, hundreds of health-related websites and blogs, close attention to the 100,000 plus comments left at my blog, forum, and social media outlets, and personal communication with thousands of individuals from all walks of life, all ethnicities, and dozens of countries worldwide, is helping to guide people back to health from the devastation perpetrated by various popular diets. In fact, in a world full of people seemingly on a quest for self-destruction through drinking, drugs, fast food, cigarette smoking, and otherwise abusive behavior, the people with the worst health that I've seen are not those that threw caution to the wind, although they ended up plenty sick too. Nope. Those in the most dire circumstances were precisely the people who tried hardest to eat the perfect diet, live the perfect lifestyle, and otherwise intellectualized all their habits. Like fitness and nutrition authority Paul Chek said in a well-received talk given to the Price-Pottinger Nutrition Foundation, "If you want to see some really fat and or sick people, go to a nutrition conference." Despite Chek's arrogance, there is some truth to that. That's because all of the miracle health crusades out there are just plain dangerous. From the secret, underground, low-carb society that possesses the holy Atkins Chronicles, to the high priest of the freakishly cult-like vegetarian movement, to the naive, socially dysfunctional, and scientifically ignorant paleo-nutrition clan, to the food-weighing, calorie-phobic diet masters of the mainstream, to the pompous and self-righteous club of finishers of the ultimate litmus test of human stupidity, the 26.2-mile Marathon. While nearly all of them serve up a healthy dose of apparent short-term benefits, and many are indeed highly beneficial on many fronts in comparison to pounding 2 liters of Pepsi daily while watching Jersey Shore marathons instead of running a marathon, they are all ultimately imbalanced, counterproductive if continued long-term, and dangerous to a human being who has convinced him or herself that the food, or rest, that they need to rebalance their bodies is a villain. One thing all of the above recommendations have in common is that they all reduce the metabolism, lower thyroid hormone production and utilization. Some, like marathon running or very low-calorie diets, more so than others. The metabolism is the centerpiece of our health, in charge of the proper oxygenation of our cells, the energy production that takes place in the mitochondria in every one of our cells, the health of our immune system, keeping our youthfulness intact for as long as possible, and a lot more. In fact, one popular book on the subject of hypothyroidism has a chapter on symptoms that is over 80 pages in length. When every cell is influenced by the metabolism, there is really nothing that breaks down that doesn't somehow relate back to it. There's a reason why, when people age, they become increasingly prone to store fat. They lose muscle mass, quickness, strength, and agility, and become much more prone to develop degenerative diseases. It's quite simple, actually. They lose the full metabolic potential they had in their youth. Severe dietary restrictions, particularly of carbohydrates or calories, as well as many other factors, all expedite the aging process due to their ability to obliterate a healthy metabolism. In some animal forms, at least, chronic undernutrition prolongs the natural lifespan. It has been suggested that the natural lifespan is fixed not in time, but in terms of total metabolism or some function of the rate of living. But in man, severe undernutrition makes him look, feel, and act prematurely old. There are also changes in basal metabolism and in sexual function which resemble those produced by age. Ansel Keys, The Biology of Human Starvation. Funny thing is, even Dr. Atkins, the top-selling weight loss author of all time, understood this, even as it pertained to his own diet, referenced by the phrase "this one" in the passage below. Remember that prolonged dieting, this one, low-fat, low-calorie, or a combination, tends to shut down thyroid function. This is usually not a problem with the thyroid gland, therefore blood tests are likely to be normal, but with the liver, which fails to convert T4 into the more active thyroid principle T3. The diagnosis is made on clinical grounds with the presence of fatigue, sluggishness, dry skin, coarse or falling hair, an elevation in cholesterol, or a low body temperature. I ask my patients to take 4 temperature readings daily before the 3 meals and near bedtime. If the average of all these temperatures taken for at least 3 days is below 97.8 degrees Fahrenheit, or 36.5 degrees Celsius, that is usually low enough to point to this form of thyroid problem. Lower readings than that are even more convincing. In the pages that follow, I hope to lay out, as simply as I can, a few compelling reasons to quit dieting forever, and how you can go about rehabilitating your body from past diets, and your relationship with your body and food in general. There is no one-size-fits-all, but for most it is not that hard of a process, no matter what your age, gender, or personal history. In fact, those with the most extensive history of restricted diets and who are substantially overweight tend to respond best. Health Defined. Quote by Henry Beeler. The physical energy of the adrenal type is seemingly inexhaustible, as is the nervous response of the sympathetic system, a result of perfect oxidation of phosphorus in the nerve tissue. Oxidation of carbon in the muscular system gives the adrenal type his great warmth. Thus, the temperature of his body is scarcely ever below 98.8, with hands and feet always pleasantly warm. As digestion and detoxification of food poisons depend greatly upon oxidation in the liver and intestines, it follows that the typical adrenal type, with his perfect oxidation, has thorough digestion. In fact, he may and often does boast that he can eat any and all kinds of food without discomfort. The exogenous uric acid products as well as the endoxyl compounds are completely detoxicated in the liver, do not accumulate in the blood, nor are they found in the urine. The skeletal muscles are well developed and have splendid tone. Fatigue is practically unknown to the adrenal type. His muscular endurance is spectacular, and the perfect tone of the involuntary muscles is evidenced by complete and rapid peristalsis, resulting in several bowel evacuations daily. He can dine on the most impossible food combinations imaginable with no evil results. The quality of the blood is characteristic. A slight to marked polycythemia, more red cells than usual, occurs. Leukopenia, or abnormal white cell count on the low side, is never noted. The blood, which is of a rich red color, clots quickly. Fatal hemorrhage seldom occurs. The immunity against bacterial invasion is spectacular. The typical adrenal type hardly ever becomes infected, even with venereal diseases. A member of the adrenal type group has a phlegmatic disposition, easygoing, jolly, slow to anger, never bothered with insomnia, fear, or cold feet. He will often go out of his way to avoid a quarrel. Customarily, he has a wide circle of friends because he is warm-hearted and surrounded by an aura of kindly sympathy. Splendid circulation gives him warm magnetic hands. He never worries. His digestion is good and he is seldom constipated. It is possible for him to stand more treatments, operations, and even more lung hemorrhages than any other type of patient. He is the patient most often discharged as arrested or cured. All the treatment necessary for his recovery is supplied by bed rest and fresh air. I don't know of a more perfect representation of what the true health experience is than that. taken from Henry Beeler's Food is Your Best Medicine. Although few of us will be able to ever get to that level of health no matter how or what we try, and it's important that we all have realistic expectations about how much we can advance our health by diet and lifestyle change alone, I've seen nearly everyone be able to take great strides towards that level of health. Will restricting carbohydrates from your diet inch you closer to that state? No. Fats? No. Low-calorie diets? No. Hours on the treadmill? No. Hopefully you can already see where this is headed. Instead of making the common error that most mainstream nutrition-minded people make, which is identifying your weaknesses and intolerances and catering to them with a set dietary prescription, this is a program about having a real breakthrough. This is a digestive, immune system, and metabolic strength training program. It's about stimulating your body to adapt to become better at the management of all the things we ingest and face in life. If you went to a personal trainer and said, "My upper body is really strong, but the problem is my really weak, skinny legs," you'd probably find the trainer putting more emphasis on your weak spot and working the weak spot harder. Although this isn't an exact parallel to what you're about to experience, that ain't too far off. For example, cutting meat out of your diet can reduce hydrochloric acid production produced by your stomach, and turn down several of the meat-digesting enzymes needed to properly dispose of ammonia and other byproducts of meat digestion. Eating meat after being a long-term vegetarian can make you sick at first. Most people that avoid carbohydrates and notice some immediate health improvements and weight loss are people with poor carbohydrate metabolism. In the absence of carbohydrates, glucose metabolism becomes increasingly worse from both a digestive and a metabolic standpoint. When they return to eating carbs, they have their, quote, carbs of the devil beliefs reconfirmed as they get foggy-headed, bloated, gassy, pimpled, fat, and have their cravings and hunger go wild. Most people will eventually develop health problems on a low-carb diet or low-fat diet, to pick on the fat haters too, and anyone engaged in macronutrient warfare, including even gaining a bunch of weight back that they initially lost, and they will eventually crave carbohydrates or find that a carb-free diet has become just too socially crippling. As I often say, you can run from carbs, but you can't hide. A low-carb diet can even start to raise blood sugars to approximate diabetic levels. The real answer is to improve glucose metabolism and digestion, which is what this program will do. Same with fat digestion and fat burning, as well as being able to eat a high-calorie meal without gaining weight from it. Even many food allergies and intolerances can be overcome as well. And these intolerances are yet another thing that pops up in the undernourished and overworked. If you don't believe food intolerances surface from lack of abundant nutrition, you should see what an anorexic goes through while trying to recover. They are hypersensitive to everything, can't digest or metabolize anything properly, have major glucose metabolism problems, severe reactive hypoglycemia, and are generally poisoned by food, hence why so few ever successfully recover. It's totally self-perpetuating. But so is Sherlock Holmesing the crap out of your diet to figure out what you do and don't tolerate. A practice I've rarely seen lead to anything but a life sentence and dietary prison. Anyway, I think you'll all find this to be really quite liberating. It's so liberating that I'm not wearing any pants right now. Oh, I'm funny. I should have mentioned that. Pardon. I try to be funny. If we added up all the special avoidance diets, no one could eat anything. Many people are ruining their health by avoiding too many foods. Ray Peat. A few words about my research style. I am often challenged about my research style and called unscientific by the naysayers, of which there are many. To be expected when the ideas you promote, if true, undermine the credibility of nearly every major health, medical, nutrition movement on earth. Today's standard for writing about health and nutrition, more than any other field of science, has become pitiful. It is expected that any claim you make must have a clinical trial to back it up, or else it is as good as, in the words of R.J. Fletcher in the movie UHF, a festering bowl of dog snot. It is assumed that clinical trials actually have some real basis, are reliable, and the conclusions that stem from such studies are totally infallible. In short, they convince the less educated who don't understand the whole picture. And no study is done in the context of real life and any fool's experiential observation. I think of using studies to back claims or hypotheses as being cheap. Cheap to an almost infinite degree, taking something out of context and pretending it is supportive of your viewpoint. I've perused all kinds of things on PubMed and other databases of scientific studies and papers. I've also experienced the psychology of coming up with an idea, doing a Google search, and finding my suspicion confirmed by umpteen different credible sources. It's awesome. Nothing feels more validating, and when you bring that idea to the public in a paragraph or article, you're packing heat. Heavy artillery that no one can argue against. But over time, as my thoughts and opinions have changed and been fine-tuned, I've seen that basically any thought that pops into my head can be confirmed by a long list of studies. From your industry-standard, double-blind, placebo-controlled, peer-reviewed golden boy, to large correlative epidemiological studies like the China study, whose author pre-concluded that animal protein is the most vile offender in the diet. Ha ha ha! Actually, let's look at the China study, as that's a good example. The China study was spearheaded by a strong vegetarian advocate, T. Colin Campbell. In the study, he looked at numerous Chinese provinces to find out what factor correlated most strongly with rates of heart disease, obesity, diabetes, cancer, etc. In this study, the strongest correlation between rising rates of degenerative disease was an increased intake of animal source protein, according to him. But this has been formidably challenged by a young and very smart statistician named Denise Minger. A bad researcher and god-awful scientist would see this correlation, jump for joy since it lined up with his preconceived beliefs, and shortly thereafter appear on a pedestal before the whole world to tell them of this great discovery while vehemently defending his position against those challenging him with contradictory ideas and data. That's exactly what T. Colin Campbell has done, gathering up other vegetarian-minded doctors and researchers as his wingmen, and going on an anti-meat crusade. He's not interested in contradictory ideas, but instead fights off threats to the conclusion of the China study, threats like, the fact that nearly every society on Earth eats lots of animal protein and several of those societies have no degenerative disease while others eating the same amount of animal protein have the highest rates of degenerative disease on Earth. By saying something like, paraphrasing again, China study, bitches! These kind of cheap tactics are used on all sides of the great health debate. Everyone is saying, this study proves I'm right, bitches! Funny thing is, everyone is saying something different. Some in complete opposition to one another, and each has a vast assortment of studies that they use as confirmation and ammunition against the infidels. This same tragedy befell Ansel Keys, an excellent laboratory researcher who looked at some rudimentary correlative data showing that countries that eat more fat had more heart disease than countries that eat less fat. This is what spawned the entire fat causes heart disease movement. To Keys it appeared simple, and he jumped to premature conclusions. There was cholesterol in the arteries of people who died of heart attacks. Fat was shown in a few studies to raise cholesterol levels in the blood, and the citizens of Japan on a low-fat diet had less heart disease than other nations eating more fat. The rest is history. Never mind that several of the countries that Keys deleted from the correlative study ate lots of fat and had fewer heart attacks than people eating far less fat, like France. Never mind that there are cultures eating an average of 355 grams of fat per day with no heart disease at all. Far less than the Japanese, who happen to suffer from high levels of stroke, a disease with an almost identical pathology to heart disease. Low carbers? Well, don't even get me started with that. They've done a fantastic job of showing that insulin resistance and rising insulin levels are a key biomarker for virtually all degenerative diseases. I'll give them that. Their belief that carbohydrate ingestion causes that is one of the most easily refuted hypotheses on Earth. Traditional cultures eating very high carbohydrate diets had phenomenally low blood sugar and insulin levels, far lower than anyone on a low-carb diet, which is probably why those cultures had no heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and so on. I help people lower their insulin resistance and insulin levels routinely by having them increase the carbohydrate content of their diets. Confused yet? Good! If you are not confused, then you have been seduced by one of the various cookie-cutter theories on Western disease, and the horrendous evangelistic scientists that head up these religions. My own beliefs on macronutrients and disease are best described by this old saying of mine. Fat causes disease? Carbs? What next? Air? I, on the other hand, am an excellent scientist in the true spirit of the word science, and I know of no other source of health information that is taking a more purist scientific approach to unlocking the mysteries of nutrition and human health. My approach is not isolated, but broad, all-inclusive, and totally comprehensive. If I come to one conclusion, then I hold this conclusion's toes to the fire. I challenge it with every angle I can come up with. I'm willing and eager to radically change my thoughts about something if I encounter information that gives me a more sophisticated viewpoint on the matter, or reveals variables that I had yet to take into consideration. I'm seeking to find the truth and expand my knowledge, not prove that I'm right and expand my dominion. For example, if a study shows that people with the highest salt intakes have a 30% greater risk of developing hypertension, I make note. However, if the Kuna Indians living on islands outside of Panama eat tons of salt and have absolutely zero cases of hypertension in every member of their population at any age, then the search deepens. Salt may be somehow involved in developing hypertension, but clearly, given that insight, it is not the primary causal factor behind developing high blood pressure. A more reasonable theory that could be birthed from such insights is that something in the Western diet screws up kidney function. I'm not making this theory, I'm just throwing it out there to help you get the concept. And when Westerners eat salt, they are more likely to develop hypertension from it. And so the search continues. Or let's say that the Pima Indians of Arizona have higher blood sugar and insulin levels the more carbohydrates they ingest, thus aging them faster and putting them at greater risk of developing diabetes, obesity, heart disease, and other ailments. Yet, diabetes and obesity was completely unknown to them when they were eating a diet consisting of 70% of their calories as carbohydrate in the form of wheat, corn, potatoes, squash, and beans. Far more carbohydrates than they eat now. Clearly, this adds complexity, and telling them all to eat fewer carbohydrates lacks true scientific integrity and real causal insight. For a theory to really be validated, it must be passed through all of the many scientific fitness tests. It must not be refuted by history, epidemiology, observation, personal experience, common sense, and more. My research style was best summarized by a longtime follower who did jump on board my choo-choo train of thought to discover that yes, in fact, I really do pass everything I believe through a rigorous set of scrutiny and continue to seek out formidable challenges against those beliefs. Timmy writes, Matt Stone is not your run-of-the-mill health writer. Although he may sound rigid in his views, he is not only receptive to, but actually seeks out cognitive dissonance. His concern is not with maintaining and spreading blind faith in an idealized diet and lifestyle. Rather, he operates like a scientist, constantly updating and revising his theories in order that they conform more closely with reality. In line with his goal, his research has been expansive and open-ended. Although Matt does not have a medical degree, and therefore may not be able to wade through dense published medical articles with the same facility or level of comprehension as, say, Stefan at Whole Health Source, he probably has developed a more comprehensive understanding of the underlying nutritional and metabolic theories advanced by nutritionists and doctors alike in the past century than just about any credentialed expert you will ever meet. He does this because it's his passion. He only charges money for some of his work because, huge dork that he is, this passion of his has kind of taken over his life. Guy's got to make a living somehow. Over the past 3 years, as he has gobbled through tomes of nutrition literature, his views have radically evolved. At each stage, he spoke as if he had finally attained nutritional enlightenment, only to change his mind a few months later upon exposure to conflicting information or new perspectives on old information. Some would view his inability to stick rigidly to a specific set of internally consistent dietary stipulations as vice. But I see this as his strongest virtue. It has enabled him to avoid the confirmation bias pitfall most nutrition researchers fall into. Over the past couple of years, his principal theories have grown more stable, suggesting he has refined his ideas to the point where they are internally consistent with the preponderance of legitimate research. I'm no evangelist for the 180 crusade, Matt Stone certainly doesn't have all the answers, nor do I expect he ever will, but he is a passionate researcher, a powerful thinker, and in my opinion, a man of high integrity. I'd sooner take his advice than my doctor's any day. Anyway, I thought it was important to address this before you go snooping around for unsubstantiated claims. I mean, why would you give any of my conclusions the time of day when Gary Taubes has over 100 pages of specific references to back up his claims, while my references can be packed into just a few pages and are mostly books, some dating back a century? Because those tactics are cheap, remove human logic and critical thinking and analysis from the picture, and disempower the reader. It's how people fall head over heels for short-lived, dead-end, dangerous, and narrow-minded health beliefs and approaches. If anything, I hope to educate and empower readers to think for themselves so they can avoid this seductive trap in the future, not brainwash them into total agreement. Or, more simply, this is what I'm trying to say. A comment I left on the 180 blog the morning of writing this. I don't rely on cheap tactics like using scientific studies to prove a pre-asserted hypothesis. Instead, I incorporate reasoning, logic, history, observation, and more. That's what makes 180 Degree Health superior to other health information that relies on isolated studies that are fully citable. Anyone can prove whatever they want. It's easy. I could prove via those mechanisms that carbs are the devil, fat is the devil, protein is the devil, grains destroy your digestive tract, grains are the ultimate food for digestive health, fruit is the devil, fruit is the salvation of mankind, dairy is the perfect food, dairy is atherogenic, dairy causes autoimmune disease, dairy cures autoimmune disease, fat makes you fat, fat makes you thin. No wonder everybody else is so confused. I would be too if this is what I primarily relied upon to investigate the vast topic of human health. Macronutrient wars. The macronutrients, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Like a lot of people, I was easily excited by a lot of the low-carb bias research that I came across in the first couple of years of my health and nutrition research. I'm a natural contrarian, and with my background as a butter and foie gras slinging chef at some of the most absurdly expensive and over-the-top restaurants on earth, I fell right into the low-carb layer. I loved Weston A. Price's "butter is a health food" message. I couldn't wait after eating a primarily vegetarian diet for years to dig into some monster steaks and untrimmed pork chops. Some days I would just drink cream straight out of the container. Wow, I was in heaven. And my initial results on a low-carb diet were amazing. In the past, I had been one of those constantly hungry guys. I had a serious sugar addiction. Those, quote, low blood sugar episodes seemed quite common, and I had the typical roller coaster ride that many on a high-carbohydrate diet report, and which the low-carb diet is powerful medicine for. So yes, low-carb was a life changer. What a difference. I lost my appetite, spontaneously grew muscle, started getting up at dawn with tons of energy without setting an alarm clock, had a constant and reliable mood for the first time in my life, and more. I thought low carb was the greatest thing since sliced ham, not bread. At least at first I did. We're talking low moderate carb, about 100 grams per day, not ketogenic low carb or Atkins low carb. So I bit on the low carb message hook, line, and sinker. It all seemed to make so much sense in the context of what I was feeling. In particular, I bought into the low-carb theory on insulin resistance and how it develops. For the newbies to the health and nutrition discussion, insulin resistance is a hormonal state in the body in which cells become unresponsive to the hormone insulin. To override this dysfunction, extra insulin is secreted to do the job. With this chronically elevated level of insulin comes greater storage of ingested food into fat cells, and an inhibition of fat release from the cells to be burned for energy. Eventually, blood glucose levels tend to rise as well, particularly after meals. These are the baby steps on the yellow brick road to type 2 diabetes and serious weight problems. The general belief about insulin resistance is that spiking insulin repeatedly, which happens every time you ingest a large quantity of food, particularly protein and carbohydrates, leads to the cells closing down and no longer accepting glucose. These big rises, according to the theories, and the greater the insulin rise, the more the cells become insulin resistant. You hear the phrase, wears out the insulin system over time, repeated frequently. But this wasn't making sense with some of the new information I was reviewing and my own personal experience. For starters, it is well known, totally irrefutable in fact, that gaining weight by force feeding yourself, whether you are thin or fat, makes it increasingly difficult to gain weight the higher your weight gets. This makes no sense according to the low-carb theories. Their theory is a simple positive feedback system in which the more you eat, the higher your insulin goes. The higher your insulin goes, the more insulin resistant you become. The more insulin resistant you become, the hungrier you get and the more efficiently you store body fat. That's the theory. When overfeeding, however, whether it's with lots of carbs, lots of fat, or a mixture of the two, it doesn't work this way at all. In fact, it is unmistakably a negative feedback system in which the more you eat above your appetite and the more sedentary you are to minimize the amount of calories you burn, the more the body fights back against this surplus by raising the metabolism, decreasing hunger, increasing physical energy, increasing the pulse rate, increasing body temperature, increasing the rate of lipolysis, burning fat for energy. And the list goes on. These are all the homeostatic feedback mechanisms that regulate body weight kicking in. Whether thin or fat, virtually all humans share the same physiology. The more you eat above your level of appetite, the more difficult it becomes to continue gaining weight. Coming across this paragraph in Russ Ferris's The Potbelly Syndrome was certainly an eye-opener as well, as Ferris also challenged the belief that overeating and sedentary behavior leads to insulin resistance. Insulin resistance leads to weight gain, but most health professionals believe that the opposite is true. If obesity does cause insulin resistance, then we would expect people who are overfed to become more insulin resistant. But that is not the case. Researchers in Indianapolis overfed 6 slender, active young adults for several weeks. 5 of the 6 subjects became less insulin resistant. Oh, I know what you're saying now. They were slender and young. Old, fat people don't respond that way. If you thought that, you'd be wrong. All humans tend to respond that way. In fact, in my experience, the fatter a person is, the more difficult it is for them to gain weight above their set point. Several overweight people have even begun losing weight immediately upon attempting to eat as much food as they can, albeit nutritious food. I must agree that eating like a fiend cuts out all cravings, and I've lost 100 pounds over the last year eating like a fiend. The weight is coming off naturally, and I'm never deprived, and I don't waste hours at a gym. People think I'm lying to them when I tell them how I lost the weight. Sasha. But let's back up for a minute. As I came across more and more information suggesting that the low-carb theory absolutely couldn't be right, the more outside of the box I began to think. Think that carbohydrates cause insulin resistance? Well, first off, note that there are 5 billion thin people in the world, and about 99% of those people are eating a high-carbohydrate diet, typically 50 to 80% of total caloric intake. Next, consider that there are several populations still left on Earth today with no signs of insulin resistance. That means no documented cases of type 2 diabetes, no high blood sugars, no obesity, not even a single case of heart disease. This is the health status of the Katavans living on an isolated island in Papua New Guinea. Average blood sugar levels run between 60 and 70 milligrams per deciliter at any age. Carbohydrate comprises roughly 70% of their caloric intake. This is just one example. This has also been seen in relatively modern times amongst rural Zulus, Ugandans, and so on. Low-carbers make this out to be some kind of special adaptation that these people have to tolerate and metabolize carbs. Sorry, Charlie. People of the same genetic lineage, when exposed to the Western lifestyle and diet, suffer from even more diabetes, insulin resistance, heart disease, and obesity across the board. Clearly, there's more to the story than the belief that carbs equals insulin equals obesity/insulin resistance, diabetes, and death. Embarrassingly, it's whites of European descent that have the lowest obesity and diabetes rates on Western fare, who are the best adapted to an obesogenic diet. And it's typically whites of European descent rambling on and on about how humans are ill-adapted to carbohydrate consumption, With the exception of those genetic freaks in Catawba, of course. This is certainly what was found on the Pacific island of Cosray.
In 1994, scientists in Jeff Friedman's group examined blood samples taken in the course of Auerbach's island-wide screening of all 2,286 adult Cosrians. Preliminary findings suggest that European genes inherited from randy New England whalers and other ethnically European visitors are, in Cosrians, protective against obesity and diabetes. It appears that the more genetically European an islander, the less likely he or she is to be obese or diabetic under current conditions of plenty.
Ellen Rappel Shell, the hungry gene. Another example that I often bring up is the Pima Indians of the American Southwest. There is much to be learned from the Pima, as they have by far the greatest rate of insulin resistance, obesity, and type 2 diabetes of any subpopulation on Earth. The original theory was that they had thrifty genes, which made them more susceptible to food abundance. They naturally had a physiology for fat storage to get through times of famine. This initial theory has been debunked, but in some ways remains very true. They certainly have very thrifty metabolisms, and it is in large part hereditary, but I'm not going to discuss that until later. Low-carb author Gary Taubes was somehow able, through a Houdini-like act of twisting logic, to pin this problem on carbohydrates. Carbohydrates, eh? Just across the border, there are Pima Indians living in the mountains of northern Mexico, the Macoba, that are lean and healthy, a night-and-day difference from their genetic twins living in Arizona. Is it their low-carb diet that saves them? Have the Pimas always subsisted off of a low-carbohydrate diet until those darn carbs were introduced to them on the Indian reservation? Robert Poole reports, researchers at the NIDDK in Phoenix have estimated that the traditional Pima diet took about 70% of its calories in the form of carbohydrates, 15% in protein, and 15% in fat. By the 1950s, the proportions had changed to 61% carbohydrate, 15% protein, and 24% in fat. In 1971, it was 44% carbohydrate, 12% protein, and 44% fat, a tripling of the fat content. Don't worry, this is not a segue into a spiel on how low-fat diets are awesome. They aren't. Not in today's society, at least, because low-fat diets make normal, satisfying food very fattening when it otherwise wouldn't be. I personally find low-fat diets a fantastic way to cure myself from constant good mood, interest in the opposite sex, and lack of food cravings. But you can clearly see it is not the carbohydrate in and of itself that is the chief culprit, as the staples of the healthy Macoba and the healthy obesity and diabetes-free traditional Pima were wheat, corn, potatoes, beans, and squash. Let me know if you started eating exclusively these foods in their unrefined state paired with lean game meats after being weaned off of mother's milk, continue that diet without deviation, and develop type 2 diabetes later in life. You'd certainly be the first in human history, to my knowledge, to do so. So yes, anyone who hasn't been seduced by low-carb biased half-truths about insulin, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and so on, knows that carbohydrates are not the cause of insulin resistance and related health problems. Those that have moved beyond that conclusion usually blame food abundance and sedentary behavior for causing the diabetes epidemic. This, too, is a joke. Speaking of the Catawbans, Stefan Lindeberg, a Swedish researcher that paid these people a visit in the 1980s to thoroughly examine their health, diet, and lifestyle, notes, "It is obvious from our investigations that lack of food is an unknown concept, and that the surplus of fruits and vegetables regularly rots or is eaten by dogs." Some scarcity that is. Yet when people in neighboring islands with virtually identical genetics are exposed to a Western diet and lifestyle, they develop obesity at greater rates than people elsewhere and are dubbed as having thrifty genes. Makes sense to me. Wait, no it doesn't. But why would one group of people like the Catawbans have unlimited food abundance and not become overweight while people in industrialized nations have obesity rates up to the stratosphere? That's really the bigger, more important question in the grand scheme of things. The main question in search of an answer is what makes one person eat more food than they burn through metabolic processes and exercise. Clearly there's something about the Catawban lifestyle and diet that prohibits them from eating more than they use, or more precisely, storing more fat than they burn. But make no mistake, If you think that the calories in, calories out equation can be consciously regulated with willpower and discipline long term, statistically speaking, you'd be very, very wrong. The world's leading obesity researcher, Rudy Leibel, hasn't solved many things in his lifetime of obesity research, but he has come to one firm conclusion. We don't think body weight can be consciously regulated. It can't. In fact, a 70-year-old person with 70 pounds of body fat has stored only 1 peanut per day more than they have burned. No one can control a process so precise. It's like trying to increase your oxygen levels by breathing more. Cutting carbs, fats, or calories, dieting, is like trying to hold your breath. The longer you do it, the more your body resists it until you finally gasp for air, taking in more than ever to overcome the short-term deficit you induced. Diets all follow a similar pattern. By eliminating or severely restricting items from your diet, your body will, for a time, lose weight. You may lose weight quickly at first, but then the rate at which you lose weight will start to slow. Eventually, you stop losing weight altogether. You find yourself in the unfortunate position of having to restrict yourself, count calories, or follow a natural eating schedule, not to lose weight, but to simply maintain your current level of body fat. You feel like you're running on a treadmill that just keeps going faster. The longer you go, the hotter it gets. John Gabriel, the Gabriel Method. Fat, of course, has been another scapegoat of the weight loss community. It has more calories, so it makes you fat. This, too, is false, not only as it pertains to weight, but certainly as it pertains to insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. When it comes to modern illnesses, there are no firm and consistent correlations between fat intake, carbohydrate intake, or protein intake. Fat, carbohydrates, and protein are called the macronutrients. I call the senseless master debating that goes on in the health and nutrition field macronutrient warfare. Like tic-tac-toe in the movie War Games, those who have followed my work for a long time will have recognized that's about the most I've ever written without an 80s movie reference. The war cannot be won. Just when you think you find a correlation, something comes along to totally refute the idea. Like the Chinese, for example. They eat lots of carbohydrates, very little fat, and very little protein. The results of the famous China study performed by vegetarian evangelist T. Colin Campbell and Associates showed strong correlations between protein intake and heart disease, obesity, cancer, and diabetes. The less protein consumed, particularly animal protein, the fewer the degenerative diseases. Wow, way to go! Finally, the answer! Oops! Travel to Mongolia just to the north and you'll find very little of any of the above listed health problems resulting from their diet of mutton and full-fat milk. Travel even farther away to Kenya and you will see a tribe of people with 0 documented cases of diabetes, obesity, or heart disease, also consuming nothing but meat and milk, basically. Fat intake is also highly variable. This passage by legendary nutritional mind Roger J. Williams points, once again, to factors far outside of any magical macronutrient ratio as being the root cause of modern disease. Of course, this passage could easily refer to the variability of carbohydrate content of the diets of the, quote, peoples of the earth free of heart disease and insulin resistance, obesity, diabetes, etc. In an extensive review of the various peoples of the earth who have little or no atherosclerosis and are virtually free of heart disease, Lowenstein found that the fat intake ranged from 21 grams per day to as much as 355 grams per day. In both the Somalis and the Samburus of East Africa, the diet is from 60 to 65% fat, animal, and yet they are nearly free from atherosclerosis and heart attacks. While it might be argued that ethnic differences are involved here, population groups of wide ethnic variation have been reported who subsist on high-fat, high-cholesterol, high-caloric diets while remaining virtually free of coronary heart disease. In the text, we have mentioned the report by Mann and his colleagues of the Maasai tribe, who subsist on a diet excessively high in butterfat and cholesterol, the fat constituting as much as 60% of the total calories consumed, yet are virtually free of cardiovascular disease. Uzel and Meyer report that the isolated peoples of the Loschenthal Valley in the Valesian Alps of Switzerland habitually eat a diet high in saturated fat and cholesterol, high in calories, but evidence low serum cholesterol values and little cardiovascular disorders.
It is clear, therefore, that adult males of wildly different ethnic stock can subsist on a high-fat, high-cholesterol, high-caloric diet and yet remain relatively free of cardiovascular disorders. Even if prevailing views are to the contrary, I think that the evidence points strongly toward the conclusion that the nutritional environment of the body's cells, involving minerals, amino acids, and vitamins, is crucial, and that the amount of fat or cholesterol consumed is relatively inconsequential. A large amount of information based upon carefully controlled scientific experiments indicated very strongly that vitamin B6 is another key nutrient which is often present in inadequate amounts in the cellular environment of those whose arteriosclerosis is extreme. Experiments with monkeys have yielded clear-cut results. When they are rendered vitamin B6 deficient, they develop arteriosclerosis rapidly. When monkeys are fed diets supplemented with vitamin B6, they have much lower levels of cholesterol in the blood than when these diets are not supplemented. The animals on the supplemented diet eat much more food than the others, and since their diet contains cholesterol, they get far more cholesterol into their bodies. This does not matter, however, for the extra vitamin B6 they get allows them to dispose of the surplus, with the result that their cholesterol blood levels are not as high as in those animals that consume less cholesterol.
It is certainly interesting that the Maasai tribe mentioned above, engulfing a gallon of whole milk every day of their lives, have average serum cholesterol levels of roughly 125 milligrams per deciliter. Delusional low-fat biased researchers claim that they must have developed some kind of evolutionary adaptation to keep from turning that saturated fat into cholesterol. The Maasai, as mentioned above, have no obesity, insulin resistance, or heart disease. Yet, when they move out of rural areas and into the city where they begin eating and living in the typical Western way, their cholesterol levels nearly double and they start suffering the same degenerative ills found in the rest of the world just like everybody else. Just like what happens to the Catawbans on a totally different diet. No special immunity. Sorry, try again.
Okay, it's because in the city they don't exercise as much. The usual hypothesis that this may be due to differences in physical activity is doubtful, since men traditionally stop acting as warriors around the age of 25, and later their wives do most of the daily work.
Stefan Lindeberg, Food and Western Disease, 2010. Crap. I can't use any of the mainstream or even alternative health and nutrition and lifestyle beliefs here. Guess we'll have to ditch them all. Anyway, I included this chapter not to make your head hurt, but to help you begin to overcome your diet phobias. If you're a seasoned diet veteran, and odds are if you're reading a book entitled Diet Recovery, you probably are, there is a lot of reprogramming needing to be done. If some low-carb loser told you that eating carbohydrates will give you diabetes and are the cause of the obesity epidemic, you've been led astray, and it's probably undermining your health and sanity to live in low-carb prison. If some mainstream doctor or news source has led you to believe that eating fat is going to raise your cholesterol, false. That cholesterol has something to do with heart disease, false. That saturated fat is really going to kill you, false. Hopefully you were reassured by seeing that some people ate 355 grams of fat per day, with not only a lower rate of heart disease, but hardly a single case of heart disease at any age. And don't even get me started on veganism, fruitarianism, etc. If you've been seduced by one of those self-deprecating, lean muscle mass obliterating, libido-crushing, depression-inducing, family and friend alienating food religions, well, may God have mercy on your soul. Don't worry, I've fallen for just about all of them myself. The word dipshit comes to mind. Food combining all-meat diets, low-fat vegan for a very short time, followed by a 15-pound fat gain. 30-day milk fast, cleanses, absurd amounts of the absolute worst kind of exercise, endurance exercise. Think 140-mile bike rides and hiking 15 miles per day, 7 days per week. Self-imposed starvation to the point where I literally lost my mind and some hair off the top along with it. And worst of all, the OCD mindset that accompanies pinballing between all these different dietary utopias is perhaps the worst symptom of diet disease. But I'd like to think I have now moved past that phase. I've climbed that mountain and have taken thousands of people worldwide with me. Hopefully your baggage is packed around your belly, hips, butt, and thighs, and you're ready to come with me. Not only can I help you take some big steps in overcoming your diet mentality, but I consider myself to be far and away the world's leading expert on rehabilitating the one thing that really does determine the level of your overall health, vitality, and resistance to disease, both infectious and degenerative: your metabolism. We don't have to do all these barbaric, socially crippling, restricted diets to be healthy. In fact, every single one of them undermines our health and makes us weaker, softer, and often fatter than we ever would have been if we had just eaten the food and not tried so hard to do the right thing. And they make us weaker specifically by reducing metabolic rate, which is without question, after my decade of research, the single biggest way in which a person can undermine his or her health. This was probably the cause of whatever health problem or weight problem you had to begin with, and dieting only made the root cause worse over time. But you can be rebuilt. I think just about anyone can, and I've seen it all. This book will show you how. You can start simply by realizing that your body needs protein, fat, and carbohydrates every single second of every single day from the time you were born until you die. Supply them from nutritious sources with religious fervor, instead of playing ping pong back and forth between various diets that restrict something. Your patience here will have a payoff. Sorry, no big discoveries in nutrition since the advice to, quote, eat 3 squares a day. Our abandonment of this simple principle is our greatest wrong turn. But it's never too late to sell whatever stock you're invested in, go long on 3 squares, TSQ. Well, at least 3 meals. We can start there. The metabolism. The bottom line is that your metabolism is your bottom line. With age, our metabolism starts its slow descent into oblivion. And that's precisely why, as we age, we become ever more prone to develop heart disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, and other degenerative ailments. The secret is to protect and prolong the number of years your metabolism is at its highest. When you manage to do that, you keep a higher ratio of lean mass to body fat, have greater functionality, more strength and mobility, more energy, and more zest for life in general. Of course, some people are born with a slow metabolism right from the start. Actually, I've been increasingly led to believe that just about everyone in the modern world is born in a hypometabolic state, causing astronomical rises in allergies, food allergies, asthma, autism, autoimmune disease, early puberty, poor eyesight, and childhood obesity, just to name a few, which is rising much faster than the rate of adult obesity. And slow metabolism doesn't necessarily mean you're a fatty. The slowest metabolisms I've seen were in the highly underweight people who dug themselves into a deep, dark, vegan or low-carb tunnel with body temperatures below 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Yikes! But I assure you, this really is a widespread phenomenon. Even the New York Times reported on how the global average body temperature is on a steady decline, putting out an eerie article entitled Rethinking 98.6. The basics work something kind of like this. When metabolism falls, your sex hormone production falls. Infertility, loss of sex drive, loss of period, erectile dysfunction, PMS. When metabolism falls, your youth hormone, growth hormone, falls. And you lose your ability to build muscle tissue, perform athletically, and you lose muscle tissue. When metabolism falls, your rate of fat burning decreases and your body starts to manufacture more fat out of the food you eat. In particular, carbohydrates. This causes a rise in triglycerides in your blood, leading to insulin resistance, the precursor to metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes, increased appetite, increased storage of food you eat into fat cells, and so forth. When metabolism falls, you produce more estrogen, both men and women. And the opposing hormones testosterone and progesterone are produced in smaller quantities. This unopposed estrogen is a prime culprit in many cancers, osteoporosis, infertility, just like taking an estrogen pill is birth control, heart disease, autoimmune disease, which women suffer from much more than men, and countless other conditions relating to estrogen's ability to deprive cells of oxygen and energy. This, of course, is just a short list. When the mitochondrial energy production and respiration of every single one of your bajillion, rough estimate, cells is impaired, there is no end to how it can manifest in terms of real health problems and an overall lack of vitality. Here are some more specific scenarios. Let's say you are a young woman not having your period. A low metabolism shuts down the production of progesterone, which is essential for menstruation. Bring the metabolism up and menstruation can reappear and become perfectly regular once again, which has happened consistently with more than a dozen women following some of the guidelines we'll cover later, including my own ex-girlfriend, who failed to menstruate for a year at one point in her life, after running marathons and eating a low-carb diet. By the way, to avoid any confusion, RARF refers to the name of my diet rehab program.
Speaking of periods, I think mine have been regained by this diet. For about 5 years, my periods were sporadic at best, and the last year there was no period. Apparently, if you don't have a period for 12 months or more, you are considered to be entering menopause. I'm only 38 at the moment, so definitely not prepared for menopause. I tried taking hormones previously without any success. My sex hormones were very low when they were supposed to be higher. My growth hormone was virtually non-existent. My endocrinologist had no answers for me other than I was getting older. Within 30 days of starting this diet, I got a normal period without any PMS or pain. Normally, I'd be crippled by the pain in my lower back and pelvis. First 3 periods were also normal. Then the next few were getting lighter and shorter, and this month it was late. About a week ago, I stopped my thyroid meds in preparation for a blood test. Well, guess what? 1 week after stopping the meds, my period came back totally normal. So it seems my thyroid dose had become too high. This could all be coincidence, of course, but it's looking pretty good for the RARF way of life.
Princess. Overcoming infertility is a consistent report as well, for the exact same reasons.
Hey Matt, I've been following your work since probably September 2009, and I just wanted to write in with a little story and a thank you. For reference, I'm a 26-year-old female, normal weight, 5'7", 133 pounds. I had been mostly paleo and lowish carb for many years. I started in my very early 20s for health reasons, not weight reasons. But all my old health problems were creeping back. I had always been fairly lax with my diet, hence the mostly paleo and the lowish carb, so I figured I just needed to tighten things up a bit. To kickstart, I decided to do Mark Sisson's Primal Challenge back in August 2009. Worst idea ever! I only got worse and added some new bad stuff into the mix, like extreme severe bloating. I called it my food baby because after eating I would literally look 7 months pregnant. Not getting what was going on, I got even more restrictive and decided to go meat only for a week or two to sort myself out. Didn't even last 3 days on that. Also, sometime in there, don't remember when exactly, my doctor diagnosed me as slightly hypothyroid with a TSH of 3.2 and put me on a low dose of Armour. I took it for 6 weeks and got my blood retested, and my numbers were actually worse. So at this point, a few good things happened. After my 3 miserable days on meat only, I found your website and Diana Schwartzbein's books. I finally had something to explain why my thyroid had gotten sluggish after all my years of healthy eating and how I could fix it. I did Schwartzbein by the book for 2 weeks and saw modest improvements. Then I was hit with a freak random attack of ulcerative in October, which I've never had before or since, but let me tell you, pooping blood and mucus is not fun, and kind of reverted to my old ways throughout the holiday season. I kept reading your stuff though, and back in the beginning of January I decided what the heck, I'll go for it. I don't know if I've specifically been overeating, but I have been making a concerted effort to not skip meals, something I used to do frequently. And I have been making sure I eat at least 1 starchy carb with every meal. I've also been avoiding sugar, even fruit mostly, and vegetable oils. I'm eating a ton more grains, beans, and dairy than I have in years. Well, I am one happy camper now, let me tell you. I think I gained a pound or 3, but in the process I have regained a lot of health. My horrible bloat went away, my energy has gotten a little better, I've been very lethargic for a while. My body temp has gone up a bit, I no longer get stomach aches or nausea, my bowels became regular, I used to joke that I had a shitty shitter. I haven't had a single headache since I started, I used to get several per week. I could go on, but overall I used to feel like crap, and now overall I feel pretty good. And the big one, after 18 months, Of trying and failing miserably, emphasis on the miserably, finally this month I was able to get pregnant. Coincidence? Probably not.
The above was written by a prolific and popular paleo nutrition blogger. Or let's say you are constipated all the time and have heartburn every time you eat and feel bloated. When the metabolism rises, food begins traveling through the digestive tract more rapidly. This causes less gas and bloating because less fermentation and putrefaction is taking place in the digestive tract. You are no longer having feces hang out in your lower bowel so long that those little turds become dehydrated marbles either. Stools stay moist and pass quickly and easily. In addition, with an increase in metabolic activity, the body produces more of the hormone gastrin, which turns your stomach into a furnace, burning up a big mixed meal like it was nothing with no belching or heartburn afterward. I personally had heartburn for 3 years after every meal on every possible weird restricted diet you can imagine, aggravated the most by endurance exercise, hiking. But this went away within a week and hasn't returned following the guidelines coming up later in this book.
For those that deal with constipation, I have been constipated my whole life and needed enemas just to go. I've done daily enemas for over 2 years now, and my second week of RARF, I was going by myself once a day. Now for the last 2 weeks straight, I not only didn't need an enema, but am consistently going 3 times a day on my own. The pride I now have as I leave the bathroom well-formed, good consistency, a joy that can truly be appreciated by the constipated.
Sherry. Or hey, let's say you have hypoglycemia or you are not excreting toxic material properly in your liver. Thyroid activity exerts a lot of control over the functionality of your liver. For example, when metabolism falls, as with excessive dieting or in anorexia, the liver loses its ability to store carbohydrate in the form of glycogen. Someone with a slow metabolism often suffers from terrible bouts of hypoglycemia after eating, either in the true sense, actual low blood levels of glucose, or in the pseudo sense, irritability, shakiness, nervousness, anxiety following meals, from the adrenals turning on for emergency liberation of more glucose from muscle cells. Restore the metabolism and this clears up pretty reliably. There's no doubt it, at the very least, improves dramatically. Or how about you are a type 2 diabetic or pre-diabetic with insulin resistance and have trouble clearing glucose out of your bloodstream? Increasing metabolic activity lowers stress hormones, cortisol, and decreases insulin resistance, improving glucose clearance, the ultimate sign of improved insulin sensitivity, meaning your muscle cells are responding to insulin and letting the sugar and amino acids come in. I first noticed this effect myself when I lowered my fasting and post-meal blood sugar substantially, 26% in 30 days, and to near superhuman levels, fasting 67 milligrams per deciliter and 1 hour post-meal 75 milligrams per deciliter, even after 2 large baked potatoes. But I've seen this repeatedly, even in those who have gained weight, the supposed cause of insulin resistance according to the mainstream, and even in the most severe case of insulin resistance I've come across, such as that seen in a woman who has dieted for decades and has had multiple weight loss surgeries, Lisa.
When I started reading 180 Degree Health about a year ago, my glucose was hovering dangerously in the 4 to 500 range. I was doing, quote, low carb at the time. After making adjustments in my diet to include starch in proportion to protein, with the fat intact, and eating to appetite, my sugars are now in the 200s. Big difference. As I continue to heal, I expect to overcome my type 2 diabetes completely. Matt's rehabilitative rest and refeeding, RARF, has helped me to stabilize my moods, calm my appetite, reduce cravings, lower my blood sugar, grow back some hair, heal my digestive tract, and feel better overall.
Anyway, the metabolism is central to all bodily functions. It is the grand master. Nothing that takes place in your body isn't directly impacted by it. That's not to say that some diet and lifestyle strategy is enough to miraculously cure all people's health problems completely. That's an unreasonable expectation for anything. But it is powerful. It does work to bring up the body temperature at least part of the way back to normal, if not all the way to normal and above. Actually created a hot chicks club for all the 180 women hitting 99 degrees Fahrenheit or higher consistently during the second half of their menstrual cycle, and does so more effectively than even thyroid medication. rises in body temperature of 3 degrees Fahrenheit in 30 days or less is actually common. But since many of you have never heard of this outrageously simple-sounding fundamental of all mammalian biology, and your doctor has never once said anything about your body temperature, even if it was the same as that of a floating salmon, we'll continue to explore some of the connections between metabolism and body temperature, mitochondrial activity, and the many facets of disease, including the one everyone is so freaked out about, metabolic syndrome and the belly fat that often accompanies it. Needless to say, these many connections compelled me to use my knowledge of food and simple biochemistry to craft a diet and lifestyle program to raise body temperature in the most efficient way possible. It's a multifaceted approach to increasing mitochondrial activity and the metabolism in general, for disease prevention and reversal, greater infectious disease resistance, better digestion, greater overall vitality, and on and on and on. You'll hear more about it later, but let's just say for now that in theory I figured it should work. Its actual performance with real-world health scenarios and its ability to bring body temperature up has been beyond shocking compared to what I theoretically thought might happen. It exceeded everything I ever thought possible, like I said, making even high-dose thyroid medication look like a joke in comparison. Confirmation. There has been some pretty strong confirmation of the fact that mitochondrial activity and metabolism is really the kingpin in modern disease. Consider, for example, what was written by Stephan Guyenet, the driving force behind the truly groundbreaking website wholehealthsource.blogspot.com. Pay particular attention to the fact that butyric acid, a type of short-chain saturated fatty acid, sped up metabolism, and therefore got these little rat bastards out of starvation mode, which had an appetite-suppressing effect, increased physical activity, and increased body heat production as all signs of their metabolic syndrome reversed itself. Susceptible strains of rodents fed high-fat diets overeat, gain fat, and become profoundly insulin-resistant. Dr. Zhenping Yi's group recently published a paper showing that the harmful metabolic effects of a high-fat diet, lard and soybean oil, on mice can be prevented, and even reversed using a short-chain saturated fatty acid called butyric acid, hereafter butyrate. Here's a graph of the percent body fat over time of the two groups. The butyrate-fed mice remained lean and avoided metabolic problems. Butyrate increased their energy expenditure by increasing body heat production and modestly increasing physical activity. It also massively increased the function of their mitochondria, the tiny power plants of the cell. Butyrate lowered their blood cholesterol by approximately 25% and their triglycerides by nearly 50%. It lowered their fasting insulin by nearly 50% and increased their insulin sensitivity by nearly 300%. The investigators concluded, butyrate and its derivatives may have potential application in the prevention and treatment of metabolic syndrome in humans. There's one caveat, however. The butyrate group ate less food. Something about the butyrate treatment caused their food intake to decline after 3 weeks, dropping roughly 20% by 10 weeks. The investigators cleverly tried to hide this by normalizing food intake to body weight, making it look like the food intake of the comparison group was dropping as well, when actually it was staying the same as this group was gaining weight. Thanks to Stephan for this excellent post. It is without question the best blog post I read on the internet in 2009. To read the whole post, Google Guyenet butyric acid. Worth mentioning is the fact that in traditional diets, butyric acid, and another important short-chain saturated fat, propionic acid, is supplied in greatest abundance by the fermentation of fiber, and what's called resistant starch, in the digestive tract. The very fiber that is removed from refined grains and refined sugar, hypothesized by Hugh Trowell and Dennis Burkitt to be the predominant cause of most Western diseases. Like others, these men observed Africans with perfect health, completely free of most modern disease, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, tooth decay, constipation, diverticulosis, etc., just like Cleve witnessed in the rural Zulu tribe, eating very high carbohydrate diets built around unrefined plant foods such as grains, legumes, root vegetables, fruits, and vegetables. I flippin' love the irony there, that the mainstream tells us all to eat a high-fiber diet and avoid saturated fat,
while fiber's health benefits are most likely attributed to the saturated fat that it is converted to in the digestive tract. The other primary source of butyric acid is butterfat, the staple of the more or less disease-free people that consume no fiber whatsoever, the Maasai tribe of Kenya. George Mann of Vanderbilt University found these people to be 100% free of heart attacks and obesity, even when consuming 3 to 4 sticks worth of butterfat daily. Coconut, rich in medium-chain saturated fats, has similar properties. It shouldn't be a surprise that this is the staple fat of the Catawbans mentioned earlier in the book, as well as many traditional Pacific Islanders also once found by Ian Pryor, Weston A. Price, etc., to have more or less outstanding health compared to modern standards. Next in the confirmation lineup is the work of Rhoda Barnes and others that monitored body temperature and treated patients with an endless array of health problems with great success solely by increasing body temperature to the ideal level. This is really the best evidence of the central role played by the metabolism and mitochondrial activity as a whole. By simply overriding the low metabolism of their patients with no other means of treatment, many health problems fell into place. Most promising is the huge drop in heart disease. In fact, Rhoda Barnes, who closely monitored over 2,000 patients over 20 years, only had 4 patients have a heart attack. Of those 4, each was unique. One had just recently begun seeking treatment from Dr. Barnes. Another was no longer under his care. This represented a decrease in heart attack incidence of well over 90% versus the rest of the U.S. population at that time. Barnes, comparing his figures to people in the Framingham Heart Study, the largest and most comprehensive study ever done, noted that those in the study were 75 times more likely to have a heart attack than one of his patients. He noticed this by accident, as he was hearing from other doctors and reading about the increased prevalence of heart disease in medical journals, but as a practicing doctor, he had only seen one cardiac event amongst his patients. This is what led him to start keeping close track, and he documented it all in the medical literature and later put his findings into a book entitled Solved: The Riddle of Heart Attacks. One of my recurring objects of thought has been the slowness with which raw knowledge is assimilated. For example, I have been thinking about Rhoda Barnes's work on the prevention of heart disease with thyroid extract. He did solve much of the riddle of heart attacks, but recent statements by the Heart Association show that the dominant forces in the health business haven't learned anything at all from his work, which he began 50 years ago. His work is clearly presented, not hard to understand, and it is scientifically so sound that no one challenges it, at least not on the scientific level. It is ignored, rejected by people who choose not to be bothered to read it. How many people have died from heart disease since his work first became available? And how many more from cancer, tuberculosis, and other diseases he showed occur mainly among hypothyroid people? Ray Peat. This is a huge revelatory breakthrough, and the results of modern-day practitioners of Barnes's methods, although not flawless, echo those fantastic results. Not just with heart disease, but autoimmune disease, allergies, asthma, chronic pain, constipation, and far too many other health problems to mention here. One of the more recent developments was a study showing a seamless link between obesity in dogs and low body temperature. The two go together like peanut butter and jelly. At least that was what was reported by Dr. Roberto Raffinetti in the International Journal of Obesity. The Times of India summarized the study findings as follows. A University of South Carolina Salkehatchie professor has found that fat dogs have lower body temperature, suggesting that obese people may also be having cooler bodies. Dr. Roberto Raffinetti, a professor of psychology and associate dean, studied the relationship between body temperature and body weight in lean and obese dogs. His findings show that obese dogs have lower body temperature than lean dogs, and the difference in temperature is enough to account for weight gain. Raffinetti's study explored the theory that obesity may result from a less obvious reduction in energy expenditure, a reduction in body temperature. The idea that warm-blooded animals spend much of their energy generating heat to keep their body warm.
However, some animals have body temperatures that are naturally lower and therefore do not need to use as much energy to stay warm. The reduced body temperature would be sufficient to account for body weight gain over several months. Although not yet replicated in humans, these results suggest that human obesity may be caused by a small reduction in temperature at which the body maintains itself, said Raffanetti, who collaborated with researchers from the University of Messina in Sicily, Italy. The study was published in the August 10th issue of the International Journal of Obesity. The actual study abstract, written in nerdese, is background. Industrialized nations are currently experiencing an obesity epidemic, the causes of which are not fully known. One possible mechanism of enhanced energy efficiency that has received almost no attention is a reduction in the metabolic cost of homeothermy, which could be achieved by a modest lowering of body core temperature. We evaluated the potential of this obesity-inducing mechanism in a canine model of the metabolic syndrome. Methods. We compared the rectal temperature of lean dogs and obese dogs by A. Conducting cross-sectional measurements in 287 dogs of many breeds varying greatly in body size. B. Conducting longitudinal measurements in B. Conducting longitudinal measurements in individual dogs over 7 to 10 years. And C. Tracking rectal temperature of lean and obese dogs at 3-hour intervals for 48 consecutive hours in the laboratory. Results. We found that larger dogs have lower rectal temperatures than smaller dogs and that, for the same body mass, obese dogs have lower rectal temperatures than lean dogs. The results were consistent in the cross-sectional, longitudinal, and around-the-clock measurements. Conclusion. These findings document an association between obesity and reduced body temperature in dogs and support the hypothesis that obesity in this and other species of homeotherms may result from an increase in metabolic efficiency achieved by a regulated lowering of body temperature. Anyway, there are certainly some connections there, and old Doc Raffanetti is right that this body temperature connection has received almost no attention. Emphasis on almost. I've certainly done what I could to highlight the connection, and I'm far from being the first to do so. The root causes. This book isn't necessarily a book about dealing with health problems, although most readers will probably have some or many. It's not even about preventing heart disease, the leading cause of death in industrialized nations. It's more about taking a long, hard look at the destruction and devastation done originally by the modern human diet, and the subsequent and even more severe health consequences most have incurred by adding severe and often extreme dietary restrictions on top of it. In this section, I want to present some of the root causes of the low metabolism epidemic, which will give you a good mental framework for why the rehabilitation template is the way it is. We'll hit exercise too, as this is a very common place in which the majority of people do the worst kind of exercise ever for improving health and body composition. And then, of course, beat themselves up for their inability to lose weight or whatever, or find it mysterious when they develop autoimmune disease, asthma, food allergies, IBS, and other digestive problems, and infertility when it is no mystery at all. Piecing the whole puzzle together ain't easy, and I've gone into much greater detail already in my books 180-degree Metabolism and 180-degree Diabetes. But it's important to get a little background here on the underlying reason why the global metabolism is plummeting and taking our general level of health, vitality, and leanness down with it. Heredity. We know that most of the health problems we have, obesity and diabetes proneness in particular, is something we owe primarily to heredity. Notice I did not say genetics. Genetics implies that it is set in stone and immovable. That's simply not the case. In fact, most of what we inherit from our parents, besides the basic genetic template that gives us 2 eyes, 2 ears, 10 fingers, and 10 toes, is epigenetic, meaning that certain genes are turned on or off depending on the environmental cues given to the parents prior to your conception. Every event, every dietary choice, the air breathed and the water drunk affects this highly advanced network of genes designed to prepare the offspring for the lifestyle and environment it's about to enter into. Pretty cool if you know how to control some of those triggers, which I evidently do, as the two sets of parents who have tried RARF prior to conception have both reported their kids being exceptionally muscular and lean compared to standard references even in early infancy. Aside from epigenetics, there was also a whole litany of known perinatal impacts. For example, dieting prior to pregnancy, or even worse, during pregnancy, predisposes the kid to developing obesity and diabetes when it collides with a modern diet.
They made the rather startling discovery that adult children of mothers exposed to famine during the first 2 trimesters of their pregnancy were 80% more likely to be obese as adults. From this, the researchers theorized that deprivation in the first 2 trimesters primed these famine victims for a life of scarcity. When food became plentiful after the war, this thrifty fetus effect backfired, with obesity as the consequence. Later, scientists would also note higher rates of heart disease, diabetes, and other chronic diseases, and even mental illness.
Ellen repels shell, the hungry gene. Sweet! How many fat paranoid moms were or had dieted prior to when you were born? I'm guessing a lot. Of course, this was part of their own war against their hatred for fat and their hatred for their own bodies. When you were born and became fat, they of course forced you into weight loss programs, made you feel horrible, acted ashamed of you, and induced all kinds of disordered eating behavior, like restricted eating, known to increase the risk of obesity in adulthood as much as any known factor, all the while activating your thrifty gene even more and making you fatter in incremental steps, kind of like what happened with this anonymous 180 follower.
Yesterday morning, my waking temperature underarm was 95.9 degrees. This morning, it was 95.6 degrees. This is pretty low, I am guessing. So where do I go from here? My fat problem started when I was just about 5 years old, and I was a little bit fat, so my mom rushed me to all sorts of docs that put me on low-cal, fat-free diets. In the meantime, all I would drink was sodas and eat crackers and all those other healthy, fat-free foods. I know soda made me fat. So then I really blew up while yo-yo dieting. When I was 13, I went on a year-long 800-calorie-a-day diet and lost like 100 pounds in a few months and then plateaued. After that year, I gained all back and plus some. Many diets after that, always losing, then gaining with some extra. At age 21, depressed as hell and weighing more than 300 pounds, I became easily addicted to crystal meth and stayed there for 3.5 long miserable years. While most people lose weight doing meth, I gained weight. I finally quit and never turned back. After I quit, it was a month-long eating spree. Anyways, my weight at this time was 375 pounds. I felt like a monster. I cannot budge from this weight. It seems my body will not let me. I even tried the Atkins diet for several weeks, eating less than 20 grams a day, and still did not lose 1 pound. It's not like I don't try and work hard. When I diet, I do not cheat. I work out. I do everything they say I should do, and still nothing.
Don't worry, this person's in a much better place now, with a higher body temperature, the inability to gain weight no matter what or how much she eats, a first important step, and has lost some weight but certainly not all of it. The main thing is that she feels better, is healthier, and on the right track. Improvement and incremental progress are the goals, not necessarily some fantasy about a utopian finish line. Anyway, each of the following things we're about to cover influence your heredity if your parents were exposed to such things, like dieting and nutrient-scarce diet, macronutrient restriction, and so forth, but also influence your metabolism in this lifetime and is under your control. But just know that you may have started out in life with one arm, maybe two, tied behind your back. Heredity is by far the biggest determinant of both health problems and obesity alike. Studies of identical twins separated at birth show that heredity determines an estimated 80% of the outcome of a person's weight. But you have the power to change your heredity to a large extent. You have the power to turn off your thrifty genes and have a healthy metabolism. In fact, it seems the more overweight a person is, the easier it is to turn the thrifty gene off and put a halt to weight gain. Omega-6 polyunsaturated fat. A little over 100 years ago, modern technology made it possible to start easily and affordably extracting lots of oil out of stuff that you wouldn't otherwise be able to, like corn and soybeans.
With these being the biggest crops grown in the United States, getting the general public to embrace these oils was a very attractive thought to the businessman. Not only could these oils be used for cooking, and margarines and shortenings be made to replace butter and lard for baking and spreading on bread, but even more profitable was being able to use all these oils in the newly hatched food product industry. Right away, with such a huge potential market out there, the attempts to make these desirable over their competitors was on. Of course, in the early 1900s in the United States, even the elderly had very low rates of heart disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, and obesity. In fact, having a heart attack was a totally rare event at that time. And coinciding with that, the top household fats used were lard, butter, and beef tallow, cow lard basically. Oils such as coconut oil and olive oil were also used at that time. Most of these fats are very low in polyunsaturated fat. Lard and olive oil contain about 10% of their fats as omega-6 polyunsaturated fat. And dairy fats, by the way, whole milk consumption was much higher at that time as well. Beef and coconut fat much lower than that, 2 to 3% as omega-6. Anyway, we all know what happened. The lobby to replace these fats was highly successful, even though it was slow going at first. But by the end of the 20th century, the food industry managed to get Americans to increase their consumption of these seed oils by quite a margin. Between 1909 and 1999, according to the governmental data, consumption of margarine increased 800%, consumption of shortening increased 275%, consumption of lard and tallow dropped 50%, consumption of butter dropped 72.2%, consumption of salad and cooking oil increased 1,450%, consumption of whole milk dropped 49.8%. Nice! Animal fat, dairy in particular, although we still love our cheese as much as ever, went out of style and was replaced by seed oils, while a huge epidemic of heart disease, diabetes, cancer, obesity, and countless inflammatory conditions took place along with it. Not that one can blame polyunsaturated fat for everything. I mean, sure, we started driving cars during that time too, and watching TV and using agricultural chemicals and other massive changes. But when one takes a close look at the metabolic effects of polyunsaturated fat versus saturated and monounsaturated fat, it becomes quite evident that these fats almost certainly play a role, if not a leading role, in the widespread epidemic of the thrifty metabolism. I've even seen some studies floating around out there showing that in lab animals the greatest determinant in the development of obesity over time and even generations, as this has a transgenerational impact, was the ratio of saturated to unsaturated fat in the diet. More saturated, less obesity. Why? First of all, polyunsaturated fats directly interfere with the function of the thyroid gland, as well as how the thyroid hormones can be taken up and utilized by the mitochondria in the cells. This interference can give a person thinner fat, a slow metabolism with an endless array of consequences to go along with it. Secondly, omega-6 is a precursor to the formation of inflammatory molecules in the body known to elevate several counter-inflammatory substances, such as the stress hormone cortisol and suppressor of cytokine signaling, SOX3. These factors rise in the presence of inflammatory molecules like interleukin-6, for example, which is well understood to rise in proportion to the omega-6 content of the diet, particularly in relation to the omega-3 consumption in the diet coinciding with that. Okay, your head hurts, right? Good. Just know that the rise in interleukin-6 means more inflammation, and the more inflammation that's produced, the more SOX3 and cortisol is released to combat that inflammation. Why is this so significant? It's significant because of all the factors that have been studied when trying to determine what causes leptin resistance, the hormonal state that makes your body think it's starving, keeping your metabolism subdued, and continuing to try to store fat even if you have way more than enough already. The closest ties are to these counter-inflammatory molecules. Neato! Good thing we switched away from those pesky saturated fats and started gobbling up omega-6 polyunsaturated fat in quantities that our species has never done before. It's been quite a pleasure being a guinea pig, hasn't it?
Good news is these polyunsaturated fats accumulate in our cells and tissues and have been for a century now, passed from generation to generation in a nice cumulative effect impacting every single cell and every single immune system reaction. Booyah! Yeah, I still say that. So, this is most likely one of the root causes of the sluggish metabolism of modern man, unlike what was seen in the past or is witnessed in many lean areas in the world today, such as rural Africa. It takes many years to flush enough omega-6 out of the system to make any real difference. You may feel some benefits right away, such as more resistance to sunburn, clearer skin, and a little increase in body temperature by cutting them out now and replacing them with their antidote, unrefined starches, coconut, and dairy fat primarily. But don't expect any immediate miracles. The biggest shift is simply switching out vegetable oils and margarine in your home kitchen with coconut oil and butter. Easy enough. One tip on coconut oil. I would say for multi-purpose use, refined or expeller pressed, as opposed to virgin, is more likely to sit better with you. It's cheap as all get out, too. Many people don't like the strong taste and smell and price of the virgin oil, and the virgin oil often triggers some unpleasant digestive effects, we'll call them. But the majority of coconut oil's benefits are derived from the large quantity of medium-chain saturated fatty acids that directly stimulate more metabolic activity. If you feel hot after eating it the first time, and lose some blubber initially, you are not imagining things, which are found in any type of coconut oil of any level of quality. But I wouldn't eat more than a couple tablespoons a day. It is, after all, a highly refined food. Nor would I blindly eat it if you are clearly not faring well on after giving it a fair trial and giving your body a decent chance to adjust and build up a tolerance for the food in question. That goes for any food you read about in any health book. Dairy fat doesn't have the same content of medium-chain triglycerides as coconut, but it does contain more butyric acid than any other food. While the overall butyric acid content is pretty low overall, I think it's about 2.5% of the fat roughly. It's better than nothing. Butyric acid, if you had to pick one, is probably the most metabolically stimulating substance there is. While dairy fat doesn't contain enough to single-handedly make you catch fire with metabolic activity, it's important to understand the properties of butyric acid first, and then we'll move on to where, diet-wise, you can actually get a substantial amount of it in your diet. Butyric acid actually facilitates the entry of T3, the active thyroid hormone, into the mitochondria, where it does a sexy dance of sorts, excites the mitochondria, and makes it cheesily say something along the lines of, "Is it hot in here or is it just me?" This is why when rodents are bombarded with butyric acid, as in the study pointed out by Dr. Guillenet, they have a drop in appetite, a drop in cholesterol, I'll explain that later, a drop in blood sugar, increased insulin sensitivity, an increase in physical activity, and a drop in body fat. No one told these rodents the virtues of eating less and staying in shape with some vigorous physical activity. They just simply had a drop in body weight set point, which is the only way to lose weight or improve health without the collateral damage of having your metabolism tank. So where do we get this coveted butyric acid, other than the trace amount in butter? Butyric acid is something we get primarily from the fermentation of fiber and resistant starch in the digestive tract. The digestive tract is built to feast on the fermentation of undigested plant matter into easily absorbable short-chain saturated fatty acids, like butyric acid, but also acetic and propionic acids. By the way, propionic acid is thought to reduce insulin resistance dramatically. The best sources of fiber, and more importantly resistant starch, which appears to be the perfect substance for producing short-chain fats, are beans, legumes, whole grains including corn, root vegetables, plantains, bananas that aren't overly ripe, high maize, a powder-resistant starch supplement. Nuts and seeds contain some resistant starch as well, but I wouldn't consider them optimal due to their extremely high content of omega-6 polyunsaturated fat. In fact, peanuts and Brazil nuts have the highest omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of any known foods. The only exceptions are the macadamia nut and the coconut, both of which do not contain the heat and light-sensitive polyunsaturated fats in large quantity as an adaptation to the hot, sunny, tropical climate that they are adapted to. Note, that's what your furless body that's cold below 60 degrees Fahrenheit is designed for.
There are very few coincidences in nature, and mammals sharing our similar biological characteristics that live at higher latitudes and eat a lot of polyunsaturated fat just so happen to go into hibernation right after doing so. Good for their circumstances, not so good for ours. For added resistant starch, you can cool starches once they have been cooked, which decreases their absorption as carbohydrates and increases their absorption as short-chain fats. As I've laid out in my cookbook, 180 Kitchen, a simple salad comprised of beans and potatoes dressed with some homemade dressing is a great, convenient staple to take to work or whatever. Let's finish this section by saying that seed oils such as corn, soy, canola, cottonseed, sunflower, etc., by far the world's most commonly used oils, which are in flippin' everything, all fried foods, salad dressing, mayo and mayo-based sauces, restaurant sautéed food, all packaged and processed foods, are a huge metabolism suppressor. Eliminating those from your diet and getting most of your fats from fish, red meat, coconut, and dairy products, while also eating lots of high-resistant starch foods is a great antidote that may not magically solve everything, but should certainly help you make progress and protect your metabolism from experiencing so much age degradation. For a list of omega-6 content of some common foods, see Appendix 2. Oh, and one more thing since I promised to talk about it, cholesterol that is. Isn't saturated fat supposed to clog arteries and cause heart disease and high cholesterol and all that? To fully convince you of the whole story, it would take a separate book if this is your first exposure to the idea. For starters, just think long and hard about how easily an industry could highlight a certain perspective or hypothesis. The cookie-cutter version the general public is spoon-fed is called the lipid hypothesis, by the way. Shout it from the rooftops, get everyone eating cheap commodities instead of butter and other holy things, and incidentally build up an entire cholesterol war with a multi-billion-dollar cholesterol-lowering medication industry accompanying it. It's like a 50-year-long Y2K scare that has permeated all facets of the food, restaurant, agricultural, and medical pharmaceutical complexes. That aside, consuming a lot of, say, butter can indeed raise your cholesterol level. This is how I believe it happens. Cholesterol is the precursor to the formation of many of our hormones, like DHEA, testosterone, progesterone, pregnenolone, and so forth. What controls the conversion of cholesterol into these hormones? The thyroid gland does. If it is cranking out high levels of activity like it is supposed to, you convert LDL, the bad cholesterol, into these hormones at a high rate, keeping it from piling up in the blood. In fact, before the cholesterol test was used as a heart disease risk assessment tool, it was used as a test for hypothyroidism. When the metabolism is low, however, cholesterol levels tend to rise, particularly the LDL to HDL ratio, which is precisely why cholesterol levels are a decent marker for a low metabolism. Note, in the Dr. Atkins quote mentioned earlier, in which Atkins states that dieting shuts down thyroid function, one symptom is an, quote, elevation in cholesterol. This also, of course, explains why, as people age and their metabolism lulls, cholesterol levels slowly tend to rise year after year, in industrialized peoples, that is. For many years, deficiency of thyroid hormone secretion has been known to predispose to arteriosclerotic heart disease. In persons with a serious deficiency of thyroid hormone, the ability of the cells of the body to use oxygen is impaired. The basal metabolic rate is slowed in hypothyroidism, and the liver begins to make increased quantities of cholesterol and triglycerides. As a result, the cholesterol and lipoprotein levels become elevated, and the risk of coronary heart disease increases. Subtle or marginal deficiencies of thyroid hormone detected by measuring basal metabolic rate are found to be widespread in populations with a high risk of arteriosclerotic heart disease. Kilmer-McCauley, The Homocysteine Revolution. When a person's thyroid gland is functioning below normal, he or she makes fat much more quickly than it's burned, which drives up triglycerides, cholesterol, and LDL cholesterol. As mentioned earlier, hypothyroidism makes the liver and gallbladder sluggish, so that fat is not easily metabolized and cleared from the body. Cells may be less receptive to taking up LDL, so that too much accumulates. When a person with healthy thyroid function becomes hungry and needs energy,
The body is able to readily burn fat for fuel. Not so with low thyroid function. Datus Karazian. Why do I still have thyroid symptoms? So, the problem is not the butter. Butter shouldn't raise cholesterol. Remember the Maasai who eat the equivalent of 4 sticks of butter per day but have average cholesterol levels of 125? These are very hypermetabolic peoples, and switching them to a typical industrial diet lowers their metabolism. They add body fat on fewer calories. This has actually been studied, and I was turned on to this once again thanks to Dr. Guillenet. And they see big rises in serum cholesterol levels along with it despite huge decreases in saturated fat and cholesterol consumption. In short, heart disease is about your metabolism, which is why in the butyric acid study the rats saw a big drop in their cholesterol levels, not about saturated fat consumption. And one of the biggest keys to overcoming a sluggish metabolism is getting the industrial seed oils out of your diet in favor of saturated fats. In fact, as people age, their total calorie consumption decreases, and their saturated fat and cholesterol intake gradually declines with it, while blood cholesterol level gradually increases. You are not what you eat. You are what your body does with what you eat. Fix your metabolism, and your body is much more likely to process all foods like they are supposed to be processed. Heart disease also appears to be directly caused by a rise in an amino acid called homocysteine that is not metabolized correctly. What assists with the proper homocysteine metabolism, preventing this rise and even lowering homocysteine levels? Thyroid hormone, of course. The take-home message here is metabolism, 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 and polyunsaturated fats suck. If you can remember that, you'll be well on your way. Did I mention they cause cancer and age your skin, brain, organs, and tissues faster? It is time for the housewife to make another decision. Can she afford to continue the unsaturated fats with their demonstrated toxicity and run the risk of cancer in her family? It was difficult to deny the members of her family their eggs, bacon, etc., but mothers have a way of achieving a desirable change. Now she has found that a mistake was made, and she should be just as eager to reverse her stand and prevent some new tragedies. It will be hard to ignore the propaganda that the saturated fats cause heart disease. That propaganda will stop abruptly when the housewife passes up the unsaturated fats and fills her basket with cream, butter, eggs, lard, fat meat, and the other goodies which the family has been craving. The propaganda for unsaturates is perpetuated only by the vested interest in the manufacturers. The few pennies saved on the budget by purchasing cheaper margarines and oils may be a poor investment compared to the prolonged and horrible death from cancer. If the polyunsaturated fats are safe, let the manufacturers prove it on animals before a new plague develops from the false statements that unsaturated fats will prevent heart attacks. Everyone should have the privilege of playing Russian roulette if it is desired, but it is only fair to have the warning that with the use of polyunsaturated fats, the gun probably contains live ammunition. Broda Barnes solved the riddle of heart attacks. Stress and inflammation. In the last section, we discussed how, with the increasing production of inflammatory molecules, resistance to the hormone leptin can be induced in a roundabout fashion. Hormones like cortisol, which are secreted in response to inflammation, trigger this effect. This is important because the hormone leptin sets the metabolism thermostat in your body, as it is a master and commander of your thyroid gland. When your body is unresponsive to leptin, the system acts like it is starving. And it seems that stress and inflammation are the predominant root causes of leptin resistance, although the knowledge base on leptin is still in its infancy. The thing wasn't even discovered until 1994. The thing about stress, though, is that it is non-specific. There is a general physiological response that takes place in reaction to any type of inflammation or stressor, mental, physical, or otherwise. Common sources of physical stress include sleep apnea, infection, injury, arthritis, cancer, asthma, allergies of all kinds, including food allergies, nutrient deficiency, minor or major, surgery and other stored trauma from surgery and other traumatic past events, and dental decay and/or root canals, which are often not as sterile as your dentist thinks they are. There are many environmental stresses as well. Watching television can apparently increase stress levels. Bright lighting too late at night, Irregular sleep patterns, loud noise, air pollution, food additives, pesticide residues, heavy metals, drug and alcohol abuse, many medications, and so on. They all contribute to the load. Then, of course, are the mental and emotional stressors. Everything from the more direct things like anxiety, money worries, abusive relationships, and the passing of loved ones or divorce, to the more nebulous, such as feeling unloved by your parents, underappreciated at work, or not actively pursuing what inspires and interests you in life. These are all stressors. Doesn't matter what the stressor is, any of them can contribute to a subdued metabolism, a tendency to gain weight, serious trouble losing weight, and an ever-climbing weight set point as you age. The physiological human response is the same, and triggers an increased release of cortisol, blocking thyroid function, wreaking havoc on the immune system, including actually atrophying the thymus, our main immune system center, and interfering with leptin. Of course, some stress is natural, normal, and unavoidable. It's impossible to live a life free of all of the above stressors, especially in today's modern world. It just sort of comes with being a part of a 21st century society, a trade-off for the many advantages we now have, I suppose. But the key to all these stressors and what unifies them all is the nature of the stress. It is chronic. Acute stress actually strengthens us and has an overall stress-lowering effect, which is why many people find vigorous physical activity to be such a stress reliever, vitality enhancer, and inducer of weight loss and or muscle gain. It's also why those who react to stressors with intense flurries of anger and emotional outbursts tend to be less affected by stress than those who internalize and accumulate emotional baggage. But chronic stress, unlike acute stress, is a totally different animal. In fact, I think the original pathway for chronic stress is chronic food deprivation. The reason why chronic stress can often trigger a chain reaction that activates the famine programs in our bodies. Increasing appetite, emotional eating, binge eating, incessant cravings, compulsion for calorie-dense fat and sugar bombs, reduced desire for physical activity, poor muscle mass and strength, and propensity to store fat all tend to accompany a reduced metabolism, low body temperature. And you bet that chronic stressors can catapult many into such a state. In fact, just recently I spoke with a personal trainer who was telling me that she really wanted to work specifically with the wives of military men on getting them to eat right and exercise properly. Seems that after the guys went off to war, the women tended to slip away and binge on junk food and stay glued to the television all day, gaining weight and spiraling down. This is no coincidence. Many people report getting an infection and gaining weight afterwards, starting a new job and gaining weight, getting divorced and gaining weight, after the attempt at jealousy-inducing crash weight loss, lol, giving birth and gaining weight. This is a huge metabolic and nutritional drain that is the last straw for many women's metabolisms, and on and on and on. We know fully that sleep deprivation is one of the leading causes of metabolic syndrome, as is irregular sleep patterns. It's really endless. Hope this isn't overwhelming. The main point of this chapter is to have a little compassion for yourself or others. Odds are some weight you have gained at some point was due to one of many varieties of traumas. The last thing you would want to do is then starve yourself, the mother of all stressors, to get the weight off. That is simply the wrong approach when hoping to address the root problem. Epigenetics has shown that the stressors your parents were exposed to at key times in the perinatal period can influence your propensity to have a chronic stress-like metabolism as well, until you take action to turn those thrifty programs off. It's important to understand the causal reasons for a low metabolism and some of the areas needing to be addressed for full recovery. This is one area that is highly personal and individual, but also an area that much progress can be made, particularly with mental stressors, as the human mind wields incredible transformative power when steered in the right direction with thoughts that counterbalance polarized beliefs and emotions. It's certainly worthy of putting on your radar screen. Odds are you can trace every period of weight gain to various stressful events, or illnesses, or medications, and so forth, including restricted diets and the after effects of psychotic exercise regimens. The refreshing news is that the simple dietary and lifestyle changes laid out here can lower stress levels substantially, lower cortisol levels substantially, and improve your overall response to stressors. This is obvious, and it is so effective at raising metabolism. So there's hope for you yet. Addiction. I have strongly been led to believe through my research that addiction is a leading cause of a rising weight set point. If you're wondering why you gain weight when exposed to the sweet treats and salty crunchiness out there while others don't, classic addiction neurochemistry may be highly involved. We know that addiction proneness is highly dependent on heredity. We also know that repeated exposure to substances with an addictive quality can eventually flip the switch from recreationally enjoying something to becoming pathologically addicted to it. Modern food is processed and manipulated in such a way by food scientists that it can be quite addictive. The purpose of one of these food engineers is to create food that evokes the absolute maximum pleasure response in the human brain. When they succeed, customers tend to suddenly find all other food to be unpalatable and need junk food to get the level of neural satisfaction their brains are in search of. This may seem like a far-reaching concept to some. Others may be nodding their heads in enthusiastic agreement. Regardless of what you think when first introduced to this concept, I assure you that if you follow this rabbit hole deeply enough, you'll arrive at much the same conclusions that I have. For example, it's known that obese people have down-regulated dopamine receptors in the brain compared to the lean. This is akin to turning up the volume on your stereo and therefore having to shout louder to communicate with the person sitting across the room. When it comes to pleasure foods, the obese must eat more of the pleasure food in order to get the same level of neurological satisfaction. And it is self-perpetuating in nature. The more pleasure food you eat, the more numbed out the pleasure centers become, and the greater the spike you need to get the same sensation of satisfaction. Like I said, this is Addiction Pathology 101. This is how all addiction works, and the pleasure hit and the numbed receptors leave you feeling the opposite of satisfied in the absence of these pleasure foods, which most obese people find themselves needing a hit of every couple of hours. The constant sipping of Diet Coke comes to mind, with aspartame perhaps providing the most neural excitation of any substance due to its extreme sweetness. There's no question in my mind that the needs of the pleasure centers in our brain are fully capable of trumping the messages of leptin, insulin, and other hormones that normally would regulate metabolism and appetite for a stable body weight. It could very well be that the neurotransmitters that dictate the feeling of satisfaction dominate all other biological and metabolic regulators, and that humans eat until the pleasure tank is full, not the digestive or metabolic tank. It's not even the calories or fat or sugar in ice cream, cookies, brownies, sodas, chips, french fries, snack foods, and fast food mega meals that does it either. A person with this sensitivity is much more likely to self-regulate their weight without ever seeing a rise in weight set point. Plus, a lean person just isn't as likely to binge. The pleasure response kicks in much earlier. No 64-ounce cola required, a simple 12-ounce can does the job. Studies in which lean and obese people are offered up both highly palatable, brownies, ice cream, and less exciting foods, fruits, vegetables. The obese people always eat more of the palatable food than the lean, and less of the less palatable food. Why? Because their standards are set higher with the numbing of the pleasure centers. Normal food can still give pleasure to a lean person, but it often requires something sweet, dredged in sugar, deep-fried, or flavor enhancer laden to interest someone with a higher weight set point. Although I have little hard proof of such a theory, I'm almost completely convinced based on how many unexplained phenomena it pieces together. For example, it easily explains why races of people with sudden exposure to white sugar, white flour, unlimited fats, and other modern junk foods as well as alcohol have an exponentially higher obesity and diabetes response and rate of alcohol abuse, such as that seen on the Pima Indian Reservation in many Pacific Islands. Living off of a sparse diet makes the reward centers in the brain more highly attuned and attracted to calorie-dense food for survival. This is an adaptation that is passed epigenetically as well as through perinatal influences in order to prepare the next generation for the food environment it's about to enter into. To survive, one must gravitate towards calorie-dense food with great selectivity, turning up the nose to low-calorie foods in favor of that which ensures survival. This backfires when the food environment undergoes a radical shift from, say, coconut, fruits, vegetables, root vegetables, and lean seafood, and takes a turn to include extremely calorie-dense foods like white flour, white sugar, mutton flap, big slabs of lamb fat, oil, canned meats, sodas, alcohol, and snack foods. This just so happens to be the dietary shift that took place in the island nation of Nauru, the nation with the highest obesity rate. Sorry, US, UK, Australia, and others, you weren't even close. Better luck next year. This is just one connection. Another includes why rodents exposed to aspartame, saccharin, sucralose, or high fructose corn syrup all spontaneously gain weight in an unrestricted food environment. They are all chemically unrelated, but they are all highly sweet. The no-calorie sweeteners are much sweeter than the corn syrup, and they are also much more fattening than the corn syrup despite the absence of calories. It also explains why lowering the calorie density or pleasure of one's diet induces spontaneous drop in appetite and a fall in weight set point. Ever try to eat nothing but boiled potatoes? How about nothing but meat? Give it a couple of weeks and you will hate food and have no appetite whatsoever. Don't try this though, or you'll be priming yourself for rapid rebound weight gain when you return to variety, which you will have to eventually. These are just glimpses into the dozen or so phenomena that could be linked to neurochemistry, pleasure, and weight regulation. Anyway, expect to hear more from me as this idea continues to develop and unfold. There's simply no question that addiction plays into weight gain in some individuals, and your susceptibility is not your fault. Likewise, you have the power, by eating wholesome foods that are not cracked out by the food industry to seduce your reward centers, to normalize your reward centers and derive the same pleasure from natural, unadulterated foods while perhaps even seeing a spontaneous drop in your weight set point. Not only that, but the quantity of, say, cheesecake or those villainous Doritos that it takes to satisfy you when you do have some will get increasingly smaller the longer you eat a wholesome, simple diet. You don't have to live imprisoned by intense junk food cravings. On the rehab program that follows, I've yet to see anyone not be able to at least improve and often fully overcome even lifelong junk food addiction. As a final word on addiction, a personal trainer named Drew Manning has just intentionally gained weight eating junk food as a publicity stunt, and to learn how to go from, quote, fat to fit. After gaining 70 pounds, this is what he says about his experience. Sounds to me like an addiction developed. All of these foods that I'm eating, sugary cereals, granola bars, juices, white breads, white pastas, sodas, crackers, chips, frozen dinners, mac and cheese, etc., taste delicious. But then I feel like crap later on and I get hungry again and crave those same foods. I'm to the point where I feel lethargic and uncomfortable. I definitely feel addicted to these foods. In the beginning, I did not like soda, but now I can't go a day without it. Otherwise, I'll get the headaches, bad mood, etc. Emotionally, it's taken a toll on my confidence level, even in my marriage. I don't like the way I look in public. Nothing fits right. Bending over to tie my shoes or clip my toenails has become so difficult. I've definitely taken those things for granted. I think the biggest thing I've learned is how intense and how real these food cravings are. I think a lot of people associate the word addiction with drugs and alcohol, but I do believe this addiction to America's processed foods is real and very similar. I know I'll never know exactly what it's like for every person that's overweight, and I don't claim to, but at least I understand better than I did before when I never had to struggle with this. I hope to learn a lot more in the second half of my journey from fat to fit. Dieting. Dieting slows the rate at which your body burns calories, increases your body's efficiency at wringing every possible calorie out of the food you do eat, so you digest food faster and get hungrier quicker, causes you to crave high-fat foods, increases your appetite, reduces your energy levels so even if you could burn more calories through physical activity you don't want to, lowers your body temperature so you're using less energy and are always cold, reduces your ability to feel hungry and full, making it easier to confuse hungers with emotional needs, reduces your total amount of muscle tissue, increases fat storage enzymes, and decreases fat release enzymes. Linda Bacon, Health at Every Size. Well, it's no secret at this point how I feel about dieting. Duck Fiats has become a well-worn slogan of mine. I know of no highly restricted way of eating that does not directly lead to a drop in body temperature in a large number of followers given sufficient time. I've seen body temperatures below 95 degrees Fahrenheit from both the low-fat vegan and the full-on zero-carb carnivore side of the world of dietary extremism. But even with those who just had minor restrictions in carbohydrates, fats, or animal products, the results were still capable of being near catastrophic. More importantly, on the subject of root causes, many people never would have had weight or metabolic problems if they didn't begin the diet practice in the first place. You don't have to be overweight to do a highly restricted diet. You don't have to be genetically prone to develop obesity or metabolic problems either in order to develop obesity from excessive bouts with restrained eating. You can also be thin as a rail and have an ice-cold metabolism. The starvation metabolism can be from either actual starvation or pseudo-starvation, where your body acts as if it is starving, including making desperate attempts to store fat and/or binge eat. I too watched my body composition fade away over the span of a decade as I repeated bouts of endurance exercise, restricted diets, attempts at cutting calories, and so forth. Like a typical dieter, with each round I lost both muscle and fat, and put back more fat than muscle and appeared softer, weaker, and pudgier by the time I returned to the exact same weight or a few pounds heavier. In fact, I'm an expert at raising the set point. If anyone wants to worsen their body composition, all it takes is a low-protein, low-calorie vegan diet and lots of endurance exercise punctuated by long sedentary breaks and junk food binges. Sure, binging on junk food and being sedentary will probably put some pounds on you, but much more if you do endurance exercise and a vegan diet to trim off muscle tissue, lower the metabolic rate, and prime yourself to store fat quickly before your appetite shuts down and metabolism speeds back up. Anyway, never diet again. Do not believe the diet propaganda served up by the highly polarized and short-sighted thinkers occupying various trenches in the popular diet battleground. There are no panaceas, no happily ever afters. Just ways in which you follow some strict and highly disordered form of eating until you, number 1, want to eat something else, number 2, crave something else so badly you can't resist eating it, or number 3, develop health problems forcing you to eat something else. And when you do drop off the diet, you'll have a horrible time digesting and metabolizing the food or foods that you've omitted, whether it be simple calories or animal products or fats or carbohydrates. You can't win the diet musical chairs game, and the human body hates irregularity and diet pinballing, as fitness mastermind Scott Abel so perfectly calls it. Be realistic. This is the 21st century. To function as a member of society, the right strategy to approach health is not to run from all the calorie-dense foods out there, or the carbs, or the fats, but build the absolute best and most resilient metabolic and digestive machinery that you can. This book will show you how. We're almost there. When you punish Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners without flinching or noticing the slightest change in your figure while everyone else around you gets bloated, passes out, and wakes up 10 pounds heavier on January 1st and panic to starve it off, you'll feel quite empowered. With the right metabolic machinery, you can get away with many things you never got away with in the past, tearing through food like a teenager without a waistline worry. This is not to say that you shouldn't still nourish yourself with quality, simple, fresh food. You should most of the time if you expect to sustain your health. But you will no longer live in a dietary prison with temptation and weight gain phobia lurking around every corner. You can return to society. Spend less time thinking about your diet. Worry less about what's going to be served at such and such's house. Leave the house without your special meals. Not panic when a group of friends orders a dessert for the table and passes you a spoon. You get the picture. This is freedom we're talking here. This is what diet recovery is all about. Now it's time to find out how you can eat your way out of the diet dungeon. Eat your way out. Rehabilitative rest and aggressive refeeding. Roarf! After 3 full years of exploration into what helps bring body temperature up most effectively, here's the best of what I've put together so far. Each person has his or her own subtle unique individuality, digestive function, and health history and status. For this reason, the details are certainly open to some personal experimentation. I have no interest in being a dogmatic ruler that tells you everything you're supposed to do at every waking moment and exactly what to eat. Don't turn this into another diet, if you know what I mean. The customization of this basic template is up to you. One thing I would discourage is overthinking it and measuring this program up against what you think is and is not healthy. I'm not saying it is healthy to eat as much food as you can every day while sedentary. This is just a temporary strategy to perform one very specific task, increasing mitochondrial activity, which seems, from my research, to be more healing and more central to excellent physical function than any other thing one could focus on. And to get out of a hole, it takes a strategy. After that, you can sort of eat whatever you want. I eat much more like a normal person than a health guru, that's for sure. With that, here are the basic guidelines for getting started. Number 1. Make a general assessment of your overall health. Do you feel good? Is your morning body temperature at least close to ideal, 98 degrees Fahrenheit or higher first thing upon waking up? Do you have digestive problems like bloating or heartburn? Do you get drowsy throughout the day? Are your emotions erratic and unpredictable? Do you have cravings that are very strong and feel uncontrollable at times? Can you make it through the day without any addictive substances like caffeine or alcohol to prop you up or make you feel at ease? Do you have a lot of belly fat or a big gut? Do you have allergies, trouble sleeping, acne, high blood pressure, a lot of aches and pains including frequent headaches, menstrual problems, sexual dysfunction, hair loss, low energy, manic energy? You get the picture. Number 2. If you suffer few or none of the above problems, continue living your life and remember to eat quality, nutritious, real food the majority of the time. Never starve yourself, do any extremely restricted diets, and so on. If you suffer from several of those problems, and your body temperature is consistently lower than normal, it might be time to start giving more to your body than you ask in return. After all, you are not fully well, and disease and dysfunction of all kinds is typically not cured through hard work and depriving yourself, but by doing the opposite, flooding your body with the tools it needs to repair and rehabilitate itself. Number 3. The next step is to begin eating better. Eat to appetite 3 times per day. Meals should be wholesome and hearty. If you were a long-time caffeine abuser, day 1 is not the time to stop cold turkey. Take it easy on yourself. Nourish yourself well and keep your physical activity low to moderate. Walking, stretching, light yoga. And keep high-intensity exercise to short bursts only, if you do any exercise at all. Go to bed earlier if you can. Take naps if you are tired. Don't fight yourself. Just listen and obey, more so than you ever have before. Your body knows what it needs. It's not a lazy pile of junk that sabotages itself. No more jogging or extreme exercise. Save that for when you have recovered if that really sounds fun to you. Just chill. Every day is spa day. Number 4. Once you've eaten well for a while and have been resting up, it may be time to think about going full RARF for a while, intentionally shooting for a calorie surplus for an extended period of time. Number 5. Once you are done RARFing and your body temperature has been restored, it's best to start incorporating exercise back into your program. Eating only to appetite, but not actively trying to overfeed, and generally continuing a healthy and, quote, clean diet free of most refined foods, without causing yourself some kind of social anxiety over it or letting it dictate your entire life. Yes, eat the birthday cake, even the kind with propylene glycol in the frosting. The guidelines for following RARF are simple. You are basically trying to create a state of nutritional superabundance within your body. Surplus, baby! Of vitamins, minerals, amino acids, sugar, fat, sleep, rest, everything basically. To follow it properly, the best set of advice that I have devised so far are as follows. Number 1. Take a month off from exercise. The only exception would be to do some light walks that don't cause you to become overly winded, some stretching, some sunbathing, and other easygoing things. Just don't overdo the duration of your physical activities. This is a particularly important step if you have a low body temperature and have a long history of exercise fanaticism. I love exercise too. I've hiked over 10,000 miles in the last 14 years. But it can wait. And it should wait if you've been a slave to your jogging shoes or local gym, going at it too hard for too long. Please rest up. Your physical conditioning can be restored just as quickly as it is lost. Be prepared, if you are an exerciser taking a break, to be tired, groggy, grouchy, achy, irritable, and perhaps even ill from stopping your exercise routine. These are all signs of your adrenals commencing their much-needed vacation. Healing doesn't always feel good. In fact, really good healing feels kind of like a hangover, like you feel when you oversleep, and this feeling often lingers for up to several weeks on this program. Number 2, start each day by eating as much food as you desire, plus a little extra, ideally within 30 minutes of waking up in the morning. Many people are not breakfast eaters. This can be one key reason for some people's entire metabolic problems. Break the fast after sleeping as quickly as possible. You get far more metabolic mileage out of that first hour after waking than at any other time of day. And this is an essential time to supply glucose to your system and shut down the early morning load of stress hormones. Eating a good breakfast can be life-changing, seriously. The best breakfast to eat is one comprised of mostly carbohydrate foods and little heavy food like meat. This may make you crash at first and get hungry, but this should pass as you recover. Fruit, toast, juice, muffins, waffles, pancakes, breads, fried potatoes or yams, rice, fruit smoothies, any kind of grain porridge, the occasional dry cereal, these are all excellent. But try to emphasize the carbohydrate at the morning meal and don't hold back at all. Number 3, as soon as you feel inclined to eat again, eat again. See how easy this is? Eat until you do not desire another bite, potentially eating slightly more than you desire. Make sure each feeding you eat to fullness. No snacking. No light meals. If you eat 3 meals by noon, fine. Eat until you are deeply satisfied each time, though. That is key. You do not have to force lots of unwanted foods down your throat. That will ruin the whole experience. Eat as much as you can enjoy, plus a few bites for good measure. Number 4, get extra sleep. Take naps if you get tired and go to bed as close to sunset as possible. In other words, go to bed early. If this doesn't fit into your schedule somehow, make sure you at least get 8 hours of sleep per night. The 180 follower who completely committed to RARF and had the quickest and most dramatic response to it claimed, between naps and sleeping at night, to have slept between 12 and 14 hours per day. She was coming off of caffeine, cigarettes, tragically undereating of poor foods, and over-exercising all thrown in together. She's like a new woman now, clean, strong, nourished, and
losing weight while still eating more food in one day than I used to have in 3.
Number 5, don't overhydrate. This is often completely overlooked in other metabolism-related programs. The lower your metabolic rate, the less fluid one can tolerate. It's best, until you get your metabolism up, to eat a lot of foods that aren't too watery and be careful about chugging too many beverages. How many fluids should you take in daily? That is an unanswerable question with all of the variables that affect our fluid needs at any given time. If you meet anyone who can answer that question for you, run away quickly. The best way to determine how many fluids you should consume is simply the concentration of your urine. Your urine should be yellow, and you should urinate once every 4 hours or so during the day and none at night. It should be consistent, and you shouldn't have strong sudden urges or episodes where you urinate several times in an hour or two. If your urine is very clear and you find yourself having to urinate frequently, avoid all plain water and tea, drinking only small quantities of milk and fruit juice, preferably lightly salted, until this problem resolves itself during the course of metabolic rehab. When my metabolism was at its lowest, I would urinate 3 to 4 times per hour just from eating a bowl of oatmeal. Frequent urination and night urination is a sure sign of a less than ideal metabolism. Number 6, minimize mental and emotional strain within reason. You probably know yourself well enough to know what triggers that excessive mental noise. Most will have to go to work as usual during this period. That's okay, but try your best not to take it home with you or get too bent out of shape with various work crises. This is a good frame of mind to take to work with you anyway, but really psych yourself up to be non-reactive and protective of your emotional energy and stress during this time. Don't get fired for being incompetent, but be mindful of your stress levels and know when to back off and let it go. RARF is a great time to do relaxing activities such as reading, meditating, getting massages, listening to music, or whatever gives you peace of mind. Remember, every day is spa day. The specifics of the high everything diet. Just as your body became a fat-storing machine because of your habits, reduced calorie intake, you can just as easily instruct it to become a fat-burning machine. The first and most critical step in losing fat is to prepare your body for the task ahead by raising your metabolism as high as you can. For the majority of us, this is accomplished by, take a deep breath, ladies, gradually increasing your caloric intake. In layman's terms, eating more. Rick Rooney, Secrets of a Professional Dieter. I created RARF to reiterate that this process is not just a diet, but a comprehensive mind-body lifestyle protocol. But the high everything diet, in its purest form, is what is used as the food component of it. You can eat whatever you like, but I believe that the most important fundamental aspect of the diet is that it is comprised of mostly wholesome, unrefined, unadulterated foods and contains plenty of fat, a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of calories, and sufficient protein. In other words, high in everything. Certain aspects are worth mentioning in terms of specifically cranking this up to increase metabolic activity. The reasons for each of the following guidelines is discussed in great detail in my other books. Long-winded reasons aside, I believe the most potent version of the HED to be, number 1, rich in saturated fats, particularly short and medium-chain triglycerides found in greatest abundance in dairy fats and coconut. Butyric acid, as we discussed earlier, has great potential to raise the metabolism, and milk and ice cream would be the ideal source from the feedback I've gathered so far, so long as you have a good tolerance for it. Sour cream is my favorite for savory dishes, and fatty cheeses like my favorite fromage dauphinois are totally fair game. Coconut is the best source of medium-chain triglycerides, and coconut milk and fresh and dried coconut are my favorite sources of MCTs. Beef would be the third choice if you have a dislike or exhaustively confirmed intolerance to the above. Chocolate is another rich source of saturated fats and a totally acceptable food for refeeding. You don't have to overdo it on the fats, and if one had to choose between a very high-fat diet and a very high-carbohydrate diet for raising mitochondrial activity, the high-carb version usually outperforms. But I think it depends on where you're coming from. If you're coming from a low-fat diet, you probably need more fat at first. If you're coming from a low-carb diet, you probably need way more carbohydrate and less fat at first. Number 2, rich in unrefined carbohydrates. Starch is probably the greatest single tool in increasing metabolic activity, as almost all of it metabolizes into glucose or short-chain fatty acids, both being the almighty metabolism stimulators. Root vegetables, corn, and rice tend to be the best tolerated overall. Potatoes and yams are the best friends of the HED freak. Corn and corn products, cornmeal, corn tortillas, are fantastic. Rice, white or brown depending on what you fare best on, is at the top of the list as well. Amaranth, quinoa, buckwheat, and other out-there hippie-ish grains are also top choices. Grains like whole wheat, oats, barley, and rye are also fine, but perhaps ironically, experience has shown me that refined grains usually treat people better than whole grains during recovery and in general. Refining grains, while it does remove important nutrients, also removes the polyunsaturated fats in the grain. As long as your diet is rounded out with plenty of nutritious, unrefined foods, I don't think you have much to worry about. Beans and legumes, in theory, should be the best with their amazingly high content of fiber and resistant starch, but also can be a digestive nightmare. Personalize it to your preferences and limitations, but don't be afraid to challenge yourself a little. This is about getting better at handling problem foods, not just continuing to avoid your weaknesses forever. If all goes well, you should find many sensitivities as well as starch-induced gas and bloating clearing up as metabolism rises. The simple sugars from fruit, dried fruit, and juice, and sweeteners like blackstrap molasses, honey, and maple syrup, and of course that found in ice cream and gelato, can also help people out a lot. There were years of master debating about whether it was preferable to get most of your carbohydrates from starches or sugars, and in actuality there are tremendous individual differences here. Be open and experiment freely. I know we've all received a heavy helping of scary information about sugar, But as my experience grows, I find sugar, above all other energy sources, to often be the key to unlocking many frozen metabolisms. Number 3, high in calories. You don't have to feed yourself to the point of being uncomfortable and gagging, but the calorie is a powerful weapon in the battle to increase metabolic activity. Eating a lot of nutritious calories, if you are already overweight, is often not as fattening as you would envision either. Appetite often falls off a cliff with the slightest increase in metabolism, as fat stores are liberated and flood the body with surplus energy. Some even lose weight instantly upon eating to appetite or even beyond appetite of exclusively whole nutritious foods, including one woman who has lost over 100 pounds now, eating like a fiend, in her words. If you are underweight, be prepared to gain, which is a good thing. The good news is that at least 25% of those gains will be lean body mass and not fat. Even better news is that once your body stores all the fat it desires, you are at a much higher level of your hormonal and genetic potential for building muscle mass and burning body fat. Gaining fat is often the first essential step in achieving the most impressive physique you are capable of constructing for both males and females. Do not count calories and do not pay attention to scale weight, ever. It is meaningless. I'm leaner now at 190 pounds than I once was at 160 pounds after dissolving due to endurance exercise. Number 4, low in polyunsaturated fat. While I believe that omega-3 polyunsaturated fat, like that found in the greatest abundance in flax seeds and cold water fish, may even have a positive role to play in increasing the metabolism, I am also aware of the dangers of consuming too much. But you don't have to consume a lot of omega-3 to get some of the potential benefits of these fatty acids, because omega-3 competes with another type of fat, omega-6 polyunsaturated fat. In other words, you can reduce your omega-6 fatty acid consumption and get more from your omega-3s, negating the need to supplement your diet with fish oil or some other nonsense, when doing so has many potential negatives such as excessive lipid peroxidation. Yes, it's as bad as it sounds. Then you get the benefits of omega-3 without the drawbacks of excessive omega-3 intake. Nuts, except for macadamia nuts, seeds, peanuts, peanut butter, liquid oils, except for macadamia oil, poultry fat, goose, duck, chicken, and pork fat are the biggest contributors to your daily omega-6 load. You don't have to be paranoid about these foods, but eat them very sparingly. This too has great potential over the long term to increase metabolic activity. A chart of omega-6 content of common foods can be found in Appendix 2. Most of your dietary calories should be coming from sources with less than 5% of calories coming from omega-6 polyunsaturated fat, such as beef, lamb, fish, cream, coconut, beans, yams, rice, fruit, and potatoes. Number 5, high in protein, but not too high. Broda Barnes was a firm believer that consuming too much protein was really draining on the metabolism, particularly if calories were limited. He stated, "It has been clearly established that a high-protein diet lowers the metabolic rate. Therefore, symptoms of hypothyroidism will be aggravated." This may not be true on a calorically superabundant diet, but protein is not used for metabolic fuel in the same way fats and carbohydrates are, making them preferable to protein. As calorie consumption increases, less protein is needed to maintain muscle mass as well, as little as 30 grams per day for an adult male, although I recommend much more for overall health and satisfaction. Plus, protein is found in all foods, and the more overall food you eat, the more protein you get, whether you eat meat, fish, and eggs or not. Last but not least, animal source protein contains anti-thyroid amino acids in much higher proportions, methionine, cysteine, tryptophan. For this reason, portions of meat, fish, eggs, cheese, and poultry should probably be on the small side, 4 to 6 ounces per day depending on your body size and food preferences. I usually eat meat only at my lunch once per day. If you're drinking some milk as part of your approach, you don't need any supplemental meat at all, and RARF can certainly be done as a vegetarian with milk or eggs, starches, fruits, legumes, and vegetables. There are vegan success stories, but the carnage greatly outweighs the success on a long-term basis. So that is a roulette game I don't recommend for extended periods of time. High in salt. Salt is a powerful metabolism stimulator. You don't have to get too carried away with it, but your food should be pleasantly salty. Something salty should appear at every meal and snack, and all the food and fluids you take in should be counterbalanced with at least a little salt. This is not a permanent prescription, but salt is very therapeutic for raising metabolic rate. Eat enough and you might actually feel uncomfortably hot, with burning hot fingers, toes, and ears. You can read a lot more about salt's role in metabolic rate in my best-selling book, Eat for Heat, The Metabolic Approach to Food and Drink. A list of common food choices on a truly purist version of the HED would be something like the following. Rich protein sources. Salmon, canned, frozen, or fresh, halibut, trout, cod, bass, any kind. Snapper, sardines, other fish, skinless chicken, skinless duck, skinless turkey, cottage cheese, hard cheese like cheddar or Parmesan, rind-ripened cheese like brie, blue cheese, unsweetened yogurt, milk, prefer raw milk, but I'm not a raw Nazi, jerky without additives, beef, sausage, or bacon, all cuts of beef, pork, preferably on the leaner side. I personally wouldn't recommend eating much pork. Ground beef, turkey, chicken, lamb, game meats, all beans and legumes, eggs. Carbohydrate. Potatoes, any variety, sweet potatoes, yams, carrots, turnips, parsnips, beets, rutabaga, celery root or celeriac. Other starchy root vegetables, cornmeal porridge or polenta, fresh corn, all beans and legumes, oatmeal, hot buckwheat cereal, amaranth, quinoa, brown rice, white rice, basmati is the best, different type of starch in it. Homemade air pop popcorn with coconut oil. Bread, crackers, pasta, white flour or buckwheat pasta soba. Corn tortillas, tamale dough. Fruits, tropical are the best. Juices like orange juice, grape juice, apple juice, grapefruit juice, pineapple juice. Coconut water. Blackstrap molasses, honey, maple syrup, milk, kefir, and yogurt. Fats. Coconut milk, fresh or dried coconut. Beef fat, tallow, and suet. Fatty cheeses, full-fat milk, half and half, cream, sour cream, and creme fraiche. Macadamia nuts, macadamia nut oil, olives, olive oil, very fatty cuts of beef and ground beef, fatty fish like salmon, bone marrow, whale blubber. Just kidding, making sure you're still reading this. Oh yeah, you should eat some vegetables too. You don't have to panic about meeting a certain quota though. In fact, many vegetables such as kale, bok choy, cabbage, broccoli, and cauliflower contain powerful anti-thyroid substances. So eat some vegetables, sure, just don't force yourself to eat them to achieve some kind of Popeye awesomeness. If you want forearms like that, I would eat lots of carbs and protein and masturbate excessively. For extensive recipes and cooking instruction, you will enjoy my book 180 Kitchen, 180 Tips, Recipes, and more. It's very important that your food tastes good and is enjoyable. In fact, that's probably the most important factor of all. For this to work, you need a surplus of calories, and to get a surplus of calories, you must be eating food that you enjoy. Sample day. So what the heck do you eat? For starters, I wouldn't even call it the high everything diet if I were you. That was just a term coined to describe it because nothing major was restricted. Your diet shouldn't have a name or be something you can tweet about using the hashtag sign. If you, in your chronic dieting ways, must name it, it should be your first name, followed by an apostrophe S and the word diet. So, for example, what I eat is referred to as Matt's diet. If your name is Jean-Claude Van Damme, then what you eat is called Jean-Claude's diet, and probably consists mostly of metal shards and king cobra fillets. If your name is Shooter McGavin, then you probably eat pieces of shit like Happy Gilmore for breakfast. My diet is different every week and depends on what I feel like eating, what's on sale, what I'm sick of from the week before, etc. Today and yesterday was definitely a full-fledged RARF day, which included 9 a.m., 2 bowls oatmeal with 3 tablespoons of sour cream, 1 pint half and half, 1 tablespoon of molasses. 12 p.m., 12 ounces ground beef with its fat and yams and pinto beans. 2 p.m., 1 pint milk with 1 tablespoon molasses and 1 more bowl of oats. 7 p.m., half-pound turnip greens, 1 roasted yam. I don't eat like this all the time, but my temps had fallen slightly, and 2 to 3 days of eating like this has been enough to clear and soften my skin, make me fiery hot from head to toe, plump up my muscles, jolt me with jittery energy, I can't stop fantasizing about exercising as I write this, and deepen my sleep. You eat what you think sounds awesome and satisfying, and that will change every week. No more diet plans, nothing but main courses from here on out. Maxercise. First of all, we've got some myth busting to do. It's generally thought that exercise raises metabolism. Some forms, like the one you're about to discover, generally does. Some exercise is metabolically neutral, like easy walking, stretching, or light yoga. But most common exercise today slows down your metabolism. How many calories you burn is not your metabolic rate, but your total energy expenditure, TEE. TEE may rise with endurance exercise, but resting metabolism plummets severely. Pay attention to how exercise impacts your actual body temperature, including the type discussed in this section. If you notice your first thing upon waking body temperature falling, stop doing it. I don't recommend doing any difficult exercise at all for the first month, including what we're about to discuss. But eventually you will want to become physically active and train your muscles and cardiopulmonary system once you are healthy enough to do so. There is no question that exercise, done consistently, intelligently, and with great enjoyment, is one of the greatest enhancers of health, vitality, and functional longevity. Although there have been some truly genius breakthroughs in our understanding of exercise physiology over the past few decades, and there are some true pioneers out there disseminating truly magnificent information, most are still caught in the quagmire of exercise beliefs that are like so 1984. Richard Simmons never had a nice body, folks. And mimicking, quote, his style of workout or anything approximating it isn't going to do much for you. While it's nice to spend your days moving and on your feet doing light exercise, including but not limited to sweating to the oldies, most of the research points to acute bouts of vigorous, challenging physical activity as providing the most benefit. Steady-state, low to moderate intensity cardiovascular exercise, or what the ridiculously ripped fitness model and trainer Paula Owens calls LSD, long, slow distance, certainly looks detrimental when viewed through the metabolism lens. Paula writes, "One must exercise for long duration and often in order to burn any amount of fat with LSD. This is how long-distance runners maintain their slim physiques. However, when a runner sustains an injury and is unable to train, their metabolism spirals down. This leads to increased body fat over time. LSD exercise is problematic because it causes cortisol to rise unopposed by the growth-promoting hormones, testosterone and growth hormone. This creates a physical stress response to your entire body. Prolonged release of cortisol, whether from long-term physical, mental, or emotional stress, or the wrong kind of exercise, atrophies your muscles, nerves, and brain cells. This may explain why standard aerobic exercise is not effective for optimal body composition, and why marathon runners exhibit frail bodies devoid of muscle. The duration, not the intensity, of the exercise is the most significant issue in regards to cortisol. Chronic oversecretion of cortisol causes a weakened immune system, a decrease in lean muscle mass, hair loss, thinning skin, infertility, inability to grow nails, and a decrease in concentration and memory. Excess cortisol kills brain cells, including those in the hippocampus, where the brain processes emotions. Excessive cortisol production can also deplete serotonin levels, causing depression." Okay, Paula, we get it. Jeez, settle down. Ladies got some issues. Basically, what Paula is getting at is that your body adapts to endurance exercise in counterproductive ways from a metabolic point of view. For starters, the chronic rise in stress hormones causes an extreme fall in basal metabolic rate. After a summer of hiking, for example, my body temperature fell from 97.9 degrees Fahrenheit to 96.2. During endurance exercise, you lose lean body mass as well, which can further slow your metabolism down. You also, when doing long-duration exercise at a moderate pace, burn mostly fat for energy instead of glucose. This ensures that your body, when given the chance, like when you stop doing it or take a break, will store back a bunch of fat to help fill the fat tank, particularly around the abdomen. You also store a bunch of fat in your muscles called intramuscular fat, which blocks the delivery of glucose and amino acids into your cells to keep them from growing or expending energy efficiently. This is, of course, insulin resistance. With all this, you see a big drop in testosterone and growth hormone like Paula mentions. This favors, once again, a drop in athletic performance and capability, prevents fat loss, and accelerates the aging process. There's really nothing good about endurance exercise as far as its effect on your body composition and health. And we're not just talking marathons. Even athletes that train for a 1-mile race undergo many of these adaptations, looking like stick figures. That's not the body you want to build underneath your fat, or you'll never burn it off. You simply won't have the hormonal firepower to do so. All of these changes should sound familiar. These are all the physiological adaptations to inadequate food/calorie restriction/dieting. But these are, of course, the right adaptations to this type of exercise. When going long distances, your body needs to be more efficient. This means using less oxygen and fewer calories to do the same activity. To do this, the body induces a state of severe hypothyroidism, and is why you often see female runners become infertile and stop having their periods and develop autoimmune disease and such in response to endurance athletic training. But efficiency is just one adaptation the body can undergo. I liken it to turning your body into an economy car designed to hold up better on the road and get better gas mileage, calorie mileage. But you can go all Ferrari too, it just takes a different set of stimuli. By doing those kinds of activities, you automatically ask your body to make those changes. And in response, it does. You can train your body to make any kind of change you want. Al Sears, Pace. So forget what you think about exercise. It can be fun, and is extremely fun when you notice immediate, tangible, and substantial improvements from doing the right kind of exercise. The right kind of exercise is one of the biggest tools out there for making real physiological adaptations that get your body to lose fat and gain muscle automatically and spontaneously, any gender, any age. So let's talk about what that is. I coined the term maxercise partly because I'm a dork, partly because I love acronyms, but mostly because coining something makes me sound really cool. It means metabolic adaptation exercise to help remind you that exercise is something you can do as a tool to trigger a certain set of metabolic adaptations to the training itself. You may only do this type of exercise for a few minutes twice a week, but the hormonal changes, if you trigger them successfully, work 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. That's why hormones are so much more powerful than playing around with calorie intake and calories burned through exercise. The acronym MAX also helps to remind you of how you achieve that adaptation, and that is through short bursts of maximum effort. It's really quite simple. In a quick flurry of exercise, someone recently referred to it as spazercise, you take your heart and lungs to their cardiopulmonary maximum, encouraging them to adapt to become bigger, stronger, and more effective. This is not something that requires a lot of time. This is not something you do every day. You do not need to go to a gym, although some of the equipment can be helpful and give you more variety. You are just trying to encourage your body to get better and more powerful and explosive. The rest, the improvements in health, increase in growth hormone and testosterone in both males and females, don't worry ladies, this won't put hair on your chest. The improvements in insulin and leptin sensitivity, fall of stress hormones, increased production of anti-inflammatory hormones, and the corresponding rise in metabolism, increase in lean body mass, and decrease in body fat, all falls right into place. It is also safe, unlike you might think at first blush. While you should always consult with your doctor to make sure you don't have a heart condition before doing this kind of exercise or any other, the bottom line is that this type of exercise, with its increase in cardiopulmonary strength and capacity, is one of the secret weapons against aging and degenerative disease. At least that's my impression of it so far. I'll try to keep my explanation of it as simple and straightforward as possible so that you can be turned loose and ready to give it a try right away as your new prioritized form of exercise. The rest can be up to you, whether it's weight training, which will be made much more effective by this type of exercise, calisthenics, yoga, Pilates, tennis, golf, walking, hiking, cycling, professional napping or sunbathing, or other forms of recreation. It is solely up to you and what sounds enjoyable and fulfilling. Max effort means max effort. While you may not be able to give a max effort right away, you should start building towards that destination. A max effort for a 350-pound 63-year-old may be walking up a flight of stairs without stopping. Hey, Maybe that's not even possible. But the point of the training is to push your cardiopulmonary system to the point where you simply can't continue for another second. It's getting into this new turf that forces the body to adapt to become better at handling these difficult situations. After you have pushed yourself to a max effort, you pay attention to your own biofeedback, your breathing and pulse rate, and when you have recovered to the point of being able to breathe in a fairly relaxed manner with your mouth closed, you go for another round. 2 to 10 rounds of this can be performed depending on your comfort and overall fitness level. Total exertion time, meaning the amount of time you're actively engaged in a max effort outburst, not including rest and recovery time, should be no longer than 5 total minutes to avoid using fat as a fuel source for the activity. And 2 to 3 minutes of total exertion time is plenty for me. You want to use almost 100% glucose to fuel this activity, which is one of the things that separates power activity from efficiency activity like jogging. This unclogs the entire glucose metabolism system, enabling your body to start storing amino acids and glucose from the food you eat into muscle, where it is converted into energy, heat, and muscle. It also tends to have an appetite-suppressing effect when your carbohydrate reserves are finally able to be topped off in this way, which is not possible when you are insulin resistant because you are unresponsive to the hormone that stores all of that energy into the muscle cells to begin with. The ultimate type of exercise would be about a 100 to 200 meter sprint. But sprinting is very dangerous in terms of joint damage, muscle pulls, and other injury. Sprinting is also way too advanced for an older person with a lot of excess weight that stands to gain the most from doing this type of training. For a beginner, elliptical machines, stationary bikes, and bodyweight exercise are the 3 best options. Before we go any further, I must reiterate that the key is relying on your own biofeedback. Only you can know when you've really gone to your cardiopulmonary max and cannot continue. And recovery time is highly variable. Actually, recovery time is probably the best indicator of overall cardiovascular fitness. But this is why traditional interval training of 30 seconds on and a minute off, or some other narrow window of recovery, is not applicable to an out-of-shape person. You have to progress it at your own level and work on getting better. Likewise, if you are already really fit and want to expand your fitness, the standard exertion periods and recovery windows of typical interval training may not be challenging enough to push you to your max effort. Plus, with set interval periods, the more you do them, the easier they get. You don't want it to get easier, ever. The idea is to keep pushing yourself to the max no matter what your fitness level. Only you can know your max effort. And your max effort depends on what day it is, what time of day, how you feel, what you've eaten, how long it's been since your last workout, and all kinds of other unknowns that set time periods of exertion and recovery and heart rate targets cannot take into consideration. This is your own personal fitness improvement program, and only you, listening to your own body and knowing when you are challenging it to a new level of intensity it's not equipped to deal with, can decide both your exertion and recovery times. And you must have progress with a program to have long-term success with it. Progression is key with all forms of exercise, and you will not progress doing the same routine over and over again. You have to be going beyond your prior thresholds routinely, switching up exercises that you use to test your max, and all the while staying highly attuned to your own progress. Easier said than done perhaps, but no set batch of guidelines can do as much for you as you can do for yourself. The goal, as a reminder, is to increase how much you achieve in your max efforts and steadily improve your recovery time, needing less and less recovery the longer you move forward with the training. Don't let me fool you into thinking it's easy though just because it's short. It's grueling, brutal. But after you've given it some time and see what it can do for your overall levels of strength, fitness, energy levels, and body composition, you'll see what all the fuss is about. I hope you will, at least. There are no one-hit wonders out there that work magic on everybody. That's for sure. But this is worth some self-experimentation, and would be even if it didn't change your body composition a lick. And you really must ignore the scale with this exercise, as it's totally possible to lose 20 pounds of fat without the scale moving an inch due to increases in lean body mass. Try maxercise on a stationary bike at first if you have one. Get on and warm up for a couple minutes, pedaling slowly but enough to get your heart rate up slightly. Make sure the level is giving you plenty of resistance and doesn't feel like you're just waving your feet in the air with nothing pressing back against them. Then, explode! In a mad flurry, pedal as hard and fast as you absolutely can for 10 seconds. Then pause and return to slow pedaling. Feel how your heart thumps in your chest and notice that your breathing is elevated. For some, this 10 seconds may wipe you out for the rest of the day. That's fine. We all start somewhere, and the farther you are from being a superhero, the more ground you stand to gain by making progress with your explosive capabilities. If the 10 seconds didn't kill you, continue to pedal until your breathing starts to become relaxed, almost like normal, and you feel pretty rested. This may take 30 seconds. This may take 3 minutes. It doesn't matter, but you should be paying attention to know where you're starting at in the two most important categories: how long you can go at full speed and how long it takes you to recover. When you feel rested, go again for 20 seconds at the fastest speed your legs can generate. Then repeat and pay attention once again to your biofeedback. How did you do that time? Almost lose a lung? Were you sucking wind so hard that the toupee of the guy in front of you is caught in your windpipe? If not, 20 seconds probably isn't quite your max effort. Anyway, continue this until, instead of counting seconds on the clock, you're going until you reach what you know, when being honest with yourself, is your physiological limit. When you get there, it's a different experience. Don't eat too much before you try it. But this is what actually causes your body to adapt and change towards all the desirable things you're looking to achieve through exercise, but never could by jogging in the past because you were hormonally pissing into the wind while you did it. It doesn't matter whether this is 8 seconds or 2 minutes. You shouldn't even be watching the clock. You should be going all out for as long as you can, and then stopping when you get there. When you get there, it's important that you rest to a decent level of recovery. Get off the bike if you have to and walk around. Sip some water. Focus on your breathing and try to keep your mouth closed and suck air in through your nostrils. This calms you and improves your recovery time and opens up the nasal passages like a champ. When you have recovered to a level of comfort, but not full relaxation, get back on the bike and go at it again to the same point of exhaustion and repeat. Maybe you only muster up the courage to do 2 to 3 rounds the first time, but over time work on progressing this. For example, you could do 2 rounds for a month, then add a round every month until you are doing 10 rounds with each workout. That would be some serious progress, but it's doable. One way or another, keep making it harder and harder and harder, not longer though, by mixing it up and somehow keeping it just as challenging as it was on day 1. Remember, the point of this exercise in a nutshell is pushing yourself to new levels. This, by definition, requires that you keep making progress and reaching new limits each time. That's all there is to it. Now, that may be a little boring for some, and I don't recommend just doing the bike every time, although it is one of the better instruments for reaching your cardiopulmonary maximum safely in a short period of time. Elliptical machines are the best. But there's an infinite number of ways you can make it more fun, interesting, diverse, and challenging. And you should because, like I said, introducing new challenges and adapting to them is one of the most important, if not the most important, key of all physical training. For example, let's say after 2 months on the bike, you are so bored you're contemplating suicide. Switch to an elliptical machine. This is actually much better at challenging your cardiopulmonary max than the bike. The bike, in fact, has limitations. The thing with a bike is that you are using primarily your quadriceps muscles, and that's about it. This is a big muscle, no doubt, and it causes a lot of air sucking and heart thumping. But often the leg muscles fail before your lungs and heart are maxed out. An extreme example of this in action would be to squeeze a tennis ball with your hand over and over and over again until your forearm muscles fail to contract. This is called muscle failure. By the end of doing this, you wouldn't even be out of breath. So exercises that work just one muscle can cause muscle failure long before you reach your cardiopulmonary threshold. And this threshold is really the impetus for building more fast-twitch muscle fibers, creating more lactic acid, using the heart muscle anaerobically, and all the things that work synergistically to increase growth hormone secretion and stimulate adaptive responses. The elliptical machine is superior to a bike because you are using not just your quadriceps muscles, but also your hamstrings, glutes, biceps, pectorals, and upper back, especially if you are really trying to push and pull hard on the handles. In this instance, you are creating more blood and oxygen demand by engaging more muscles simultaneously, and your heart and lungs are taxed much more than they would be on a bike or just doing body weight squats or push-ups. Some gyms also have mountain climber machines that would be perhaps even better than an elliptical, as you climb with both your hands and legs while in place. Anyway, you get the picture. For those looking to enhance athleticism and maybe build more mobility, agility, strength, and muscle, especially after undergoing several months of serious cardiopulmonary conditioning from the introductory stuff on the cardio machines, you can also circuit through various functional exercises and create absolutely absurd demands on your cardiopulmonary system, although it takes much longer to reach your maximum threshold time-wise. Still, this can be awesome and remove the need for you to go to a gym completely, although, like I said, gym equipment is awesome for fun and variety. The type of exercises one might do would be to jump up in the air as high as you can until you are about to collapse. But since this is just the leg muscles working, you collapse into a push-up position and peel off as many push-ups as you can. When you are maxed out there, you might pump your knees from that push-up position for more core work and to squeeze that last few drops left in your legs and chest. You will probably find your max in this third position about 2 minutes into the set. This is much more draining and challenging than just hitting the cardio machines, and you might find 3 to 4 sessions of this, with a different set of exercises each time for a full body workout, enough to make you puke in the garbage can before all is said and done. But the cardio machines do have the advantage of being simpler and safer and allowing you to reach your max much more quickly like a sprint, certainly superior for entry-level exercise. You can also work in some weights into this as well if you like. Olympic lifts and kettlebell exercises, which are all the rage right now, engage the entire body and put you at your threshold really quickly. Just make sure you are truly reaching your max by finishing with something like bodyweight squats or squat jumps at the end of each round for extra insurance. Same goes for doing standard weightlifting exercise. A bicep-tricep squat jump circuit repeated 3 times through without rest, with descending amounts of weight each time, is a killer. The theme is the same. Work as many muscles of the body as possible so that you reach your cardiopulmonary max before you reach muscle failure. Or, put another way, take a muscle group to failure and then switch to another muscle group immediately to further your level of total oxygen depletion. For more creative stuff along these lines and serious body development, the innervation and metabolic enhancement training developed by Scott Abel is as good as it gets. I recommend trying out some of his many, quote, blasts available to watch for free on YouTube at www.youtube.com/ScottAbelCoaching. While there are dozens of great contributors to our understanding of physical exercise on health, metabolism, muscle development, strength gain, cardiovascular fitness, and all the things that exercise is used for, there is absolutely no doubt that Scott Abel has the most thorough, comprehensive, and expert understanding of the big picture of how movement of all types and varieties affects the human body. But that's enough of that. I don't want to turn off any newbies while trying to impress the gym nerds. I'll leave that up to those who specialize in training elite athletes like Scott. All I mean to do here is to show you that there is a way to use exercise to get results unlike the lame and ineffective stuff you've tried in the past. From aimlessly lifting weights with no program or strategy, a step in the right direction, but that's about it, to running marathons, 26.2 miles in the wrong direction. It has nothing to do with how many calories you burn doing it, and everything to do with your body and its hormonal profile changing to work with you instead of against you. No matter how hibernatory or thrifty your metabolism is, I think you would be pleasantly surprised at how your body rises and adapts to the challenges you present it with, especially after you have taken measures to restore and repair your metabolism with diet recovery and properly support your physical activity with lots of carbohydrates, calories, and sleep for proper refueling. One important rule of the training is to never do it 2 days in a row, and do it at least once per week. The ideal would be to do it 3 times per week, every other day, with total exertion time between 2 and 10 minutes. On your off days and the rest of the day on your training days, you can do whatever else you like. Play frisbee, go dancing, lift weights, even go jogging if that's something you actually enjoy. You'll find that the training supports you in whatever endeavors or sports you participate in. For more on the general ideas behind the formation of Maxercise, but remembering the importance of your own biofeedback, I highly recommend watching a demonstration of Phil Campbell's Peak 8 exercises done by Dr. Mercola. Just consider yourself warned about Mercola's short shorts. Peak 8 has regimented exertion and recovery periods that may be too hard for many people and too easy for elite athletes. Again, you have to adjust for individuality and also keep making them harder and harder to keep making progress. But the concept is very straightforward and about as complex as a redneck's turn-ons. Days of Duke, fake breasts, beer. What I like is that the exertion period is at maximum speed and is very simple and easy to follow. One problem Mercola had with Sears's PACE program, evidently. Dr. Mercola's results have been unmistakably good, though. For a 56-year-old dude doing 8 to 12 minutes per week of this type of exertion, you can't be too bummed about this dramatic body composition change. So far, I've lost 13 pounds of fat and gained over 10 pounds of muscle. A good read on the topic is PACE by Al Sears. Sears does a great job of stressing the need for listening to your own biofeedback and determining how to best perform the exercise, and has a lot of compelling evidence for why expanding your lung capacity and cardio output is such a health protector and secret to aging well. Anyway, don't underestimate the power of smart exercise. And this exercise is invigorating, not draining and spine-crushing like many other forms of exercise, which is a great bonus. And as far as exercise is concerned in general, see what you can do to purge your mind of your prior conditioning. As humans, we often have a lot of mental baggage that eclipses our natural human desires. One of those desires is to move our bodies in invigorating and playful ways on a daily basis, just like the family dog without mental baggage is always up for a round of frisbee or a jaunt around in the woods. But in an effort to salvage our self-esteem, many of us have labeled those more athletic than us as, quote, dumb jocks. And exercise is something that only those inferior narcissistic knuckleheads engage in. A lot of us also accumulate tons of mental baggage after having viewed exercise as, quote, work, and something that burns calories. Or maybe, like myself, exercise was something I did to earn self-esteem or exalt myself over those less athletically gifted. These are all human interference with the true calling of our bodies to move, play, be challenged, and be invigorated in movement, expression, sport, and life in general. Or maybe in the past you just overdid it, or did the kind of exercise that really broke you down and undermined your health and vigor. Or exercised in a calorie or carbohydrate deficit. That will make anyone come to resent exercise. It happens to the best of us. Spend some time scrutinizing why you feel the way you feel about exercise if it is resoundingly negative. I assure you that your health and well-being can only be positively impacted by reconnecting with your body's true innate desires to be active and useful. Take it real slow if it's been a while. You'll make yourself sick if you don't. And exercise with no goal in mind other than to improve your health and live a better life. Those are not finite and keep you moving forward forever. Weight loss is not a goal. It's either something that happens or doesn't happen as a result of living, eating, and moving in smarter and healthier ways. But whether you attain the figure you've always dreamed of, keeping in mind that your dream to attain this figure is due primarily to media poisoning and the flaunting of unrealistic and unobtainable goals that dominate our headspace from birth to death for no good reason other than to force us to minimize ourselves compared to anorexic people whose life is a living prison, or you simply get healthier and enjoy your life more. Either way, you win. What matters is that you are healthier and enjoy your life more. I assure you from my own experiences that you can be one ripped MFer and still hate every minute of your life. It's not about how we look. It's about how we feel. And feeling good has a lot more to do with healthy practices and attitudes than it actually does a cosmetic change. If you disagree, that is fine. In fact, I would agree with you on that, but then we'd both be wrong. Food rehabilitation.
You can hardly talk about health and taking care of yourself without discussing nutrition. But our experience has shown us that if a healthy relationship with food is not in place first, it's difficult to pursue a truly healthy diet. If you've been a chronic dieter, the best nutrition guidelines can still be embraced like a diet.
Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. intuitive eating. This book, as much as it is about restoring your metabolism, it is equally about restoring your relationship with food. After going through a long and arduous journey through diets, you may find it hard not to analyze the calories on your plate, think about how many carbs or fat grams are on it, or wonder what's in the pizza you're enjoying with friends on a night out, the antithesis of a relaxing and healthy, carefree evening. You really have to let go. We know from countless studies at this point that the very concept of restrained eating often leads to binge eating and long-term weight gain. While we all should intend to nourish ourselves with primarily quality food that has nutrients in it, what a concept! There's a fine line that almost every veteran dieter crossed ages ago, and it's important to come back across that line.
Overall, more than 75 studies have been conducted to examine the effects of various situations that disturb the restrained eater's self-control. The results are consistent. Restrained eaters react to emotions and external cues in a nearly totally opposite manner of unrestrained eaters. Emotions such as depression, anxiety, anger, fear, and excitement, or disinhibitors such as alcohol, cause a restrained eater to overeat. Conversely, they turn off the appetite of an unrestrained eater. As long as things go well, the restrained eater can maintain control. But if anything gets in the way or changes, she can't maintain that control. The reason is clear. Restrained eaters don't rely on the normal signals of fullness to regulate their eating, so there are no brakes in place.
Linda Bacon, Health at Every Size. Like I hinted at earlier, this program is intended to strengthen your digestion and metabolism, expanding the foods you tolerate and expand your dietary freedom. Not to mention get your appetite and metabolism on the same team so that you regulate your weight effortlessly and naturally like a healthy person. So you will find that you can eat like so-and-so and not notice any ill effects from it. So that's exactly what you should do. You should go to restaurants with friends. You should join the family in eating dessert at Thanksgiving. And you should be able to have a juicy burger at a restaurant covered with a white flour bun without zapping that burger with psychological distress. Generally speaking, what you do habitually is everything. What you do on occasion is pretty inconsequential, and living a good, fulfilling, and healthy life goes far beyond what a perfect diet, whatever that is, can give you. There really is such a thing as a diet being so healthy it destroys your health. And more importantly, the overall quality of your life. You simply must stop attaching utopian happily ever after fantasies to various ways of eating. People will try to seduce you with all kinds of sure things against disease or weight problems. But when you feel the urge to check them out, slap yourself in the face. If you have a long-standing dieting problem, you should probably never read another health or diet-related book again, except for the ones that reinforce body acceptance, non-dieting, and other helpful things instead of distracting messages. Just like someone with a heroin problem probably shouldn't shoot up again. You've already spent way too much of your mind, energy, and time on intellectualizing and controlling everything you put in your mouth, and you've got a lot of missed life to catch up on. If there is such a thing as a healthy relationship with food, it is quite simple. Food is something you eat to fuel your body and nourish your body most of the time. Food is not something to use for satisfying emotional longings, boredom, or as a target of your primordial desires to commit sin. Violate what you've decided in your mind is right. I mean, you can know that French fries are cooked in oxidized omega-6 laden vegetable oil and that they aren't the healthiest thing to eat. But having a desire to live life dangerously and be a bad boy or bad girl doesn't need to involve a trip to the drive-thru for a supersized order. I eat French fries every now and then. It's no big deal. I don't have one and then say, oh, fuck my diet. I'm going to eat 4 pounds of fries. And hey, since I've already blown it, I might as well keep the momentum going and drink a case of beer and eat a half-gallon of ice cream while I'm at it.
One of the classic studies involved 57 female college students at Northwestern University. The students were led to believe that the goal of the study was to evaluate the taste of several ice cream samples. The actual purpose of the study was to determine how diet thinking might affect eating after drinking milkshakes. The women were arbitrarily divided into 3 groups based on the number of 8-ounce milkshakes given: none, 1, or 2 shakes. After drinking the shakes, the subjects were asked to taste and rate 3 flavors of ice cream. They were allowed to eat as much ice cream as they wanted and taste tested in private to guard against self-consciousness. The researchers saw to it that ample ice cream was provided so that substantial amounts could be eaten without making an appreciable dent in the supply. Here's what happened. The non-dieters naturally regulated their eating. They ate less ice cream in proportion to the amount of milkshakes consumed. The dieters, however, displayed a dramatic opposite behavior. Those who drank 2 milkshakes ate the most ice cream, a counter-regulation effect. The researchers concluded that forcing the dieters to overeat or blow their diet caused them to release their food inhibitions. With inhibition banished, restraint was eliminated and the dieters overate the ice cream.
Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch, Intuitive Eating. If you file foods into absolute good and bad categories and grade yourself on how many good choices you make versus bad choices, then you are still plagued by the diet mentality and are doomed. I mean really doomed. There are no forbidden foods. Speaking of forbidden foods, what happened when God told that Adam dude not to eat the forbidden fruit? That was probably the first thing he did. Don't forbidden fruit your dietary choices. If you want Sour Patch Kids, you can eat them. If you think ice cream is bad, you should literally fill your freezer with it and eat it until it becomes neutral. Work on this stuff. Challenge your dietary demons. There's a huge payoff if you do. And really learn to friggin' chill out and stop being such a Nazi about everything. When you actually arrive at this state of dietary zen, then you are actually at a point where you can begin to choose things to put into your mouth because they are nutritious, because of how you know they will make you feel, and because you have a nourishing, loving relationship with yourself. You'll never ever arrive there by diligently avoiding foods that you want. In fact, the name of the game and the entire premise of this program is to do everything in your power to convince your body that fats, carbohydrates, protein, calories, and nutrients are all present in complete and total abundance. It's this reinforcement that thoroughly convinces even the most deep-seated thrifty metabolism that it's okay to burn energy at the optimal rate, and there is no longer any reason to store excess energy in the body. If you don't believe that there is truly magic in this psychological shift, read The Gabriel Method by John Gabriel and get back to me. In fact, I strongly believe that a hoarding mentality can create hoarding physiology. Most of our weight is managed within our brains in the hypothalamus. Why wouldn't our thoughts be able to give us the mother of all placebo/nocebo effects? One of my 180 followers actually claimed to once be able to put on 4 pounds just by eating dessert. But of course, it's this, screw it, I never get to eat this, it'll be months before I have another slice of cake, psychological noise that instructs the body to say, oh, Big Brother is about to eat something that he never gets a chance to eat. It could be months until we see this food again. We better hold on to it. Rules are meant to be broken. So for a long-term sustainable approach to a healthy diet, don't make rules. The guidelines in this book are meant to get your metabolism restored. And once restored, you move on, just eating a diet that satisfies your every need and that you can stick with. You decide what you eat, not some douchebag health guru like me. I can report on what I think is healthiest, but ultimately it's up to you to interpret and customize it to your liking. Implement the ideas you find useful, and trash anything you find to be unsustainable or unrealistic. A healthy diet and a healthy relationship with food is something that is cumulative and spans decades. I might not advocate endurance exercise, but I certainly advocate endurance healthy eating. Stick with it and make it realistic for the long haul. Speaking of exercise, it's much healthier to exercise once per week for 20 years than to ping pong between exercising 5 days per week on some unsustainable workout program for 1 year and then get burned out and not exercise at all for another year before picking up the same program you got burned out on the first go-around. Same principle applies to your eating. Make sure your diet and lifestyle is something that you love and want to continue for life. If you feel that way about it, you've found the healthiest diet for you. Make the diet fit your life. Don't change your life around to fit your diet. Don't let the diet take over your life.
Let it play a supporting role in your life, helping you to feel better and have more energy for the things you would love to do and experience. My number one tip: no matter what you've read, no matter what you've heard, no matter what you've experienced, make a conscious point to actively enjoy every bite of stuff that you've conditioned yourself to believe is unhealthy, with intense focus every time you decide to eat it. This simple practice completely changed my life and led to my first experience with sustainable healthy eating years ago. Before that, I would eat all organic rabbit food 6 days per week while exercising 5 hours per day and then binge on Krispy Kreme donuts, my body's last-ditched effort to save me from starvation. But that's another story. Seriously, eyes closed with every bite of chocolate cake. Play with that frosting as it slowly melts between the tip of your tongue and the roof of your mouth. Feel your tongue move across your front teeth like a wiper blade clearing off the crumbs. Make it blissful, not another "I shouldn't" diet moment or round of binging and hoarding. I promise it works. This rule applies to just about everything in life. Always be on your own team. Guilt is far more unhealthy than any Krispy Kreme donut I've ever eaten. And repressing your true human urges and desires is a great way to pervert your true human urges and desires. Not only binging on junk food, but molesting children, cheating on your spouse, and about any twisted sickness you can imagine. Life is too short not to love who you are as hard as you possibly can, not letting anyone, especially yourself, convince you that you are wrong for who you are. Body image rehab. If you want to live a long and healthy life, you don't need some fad diet guru optimization lifestyle book to tell you how. You already know the answer. It can be summed up in 4 words: eat right and exercise. The hard part, the part you will probably resist with everything you've got, the part that could turn your world upside down in a good way, is the part where you stop hoping to lose weight. That hope has nothing to do with health or with living a long and happy life, and even less to do with real hopefulness. Wishing your weight would change is about conformity and self-hatred and insecurity and prejudice and everything that's designed to bring you down. Marilyn Wan, Fatso. This is a mother of a topic, but I wanted to mention something about it briefly, as this is often the core problem behind a dieter's constant misadventures. Before you even begin this program, you should be ready and willing to lose weight or gain weight, and be comfortable with whatever results from feeding your body everything it needs in abundance you get. Some people gain some weight and some health from following this program. Others lose some weight and gain some health following this program. I assure you the gaining of health far exceeds any changes you experience in body composition in the first couple of months, which, in the grand scheme of things, is totally inconsequential. We have a global fat phobia and hatred that, when considering the well-known hereditary component driving our increasing body fat, this hatred is akin to the most overt racism, gender bias, or discrimination based on sexual orientation. In 20 years, I predict that fat discrimination is not something that is just taken for granted as a fact of life the way it is today. While it's far-fetched to think that society will come to truly appreciate fatness and view it as beautiful the way it does the slenderness of, say, Selma Hayek. "Hey Selma, you left your toothbrush over at my house last night. I'll bring it over later." There's definitely a body acceptance movement going on out there, and it will continue to grow. Anyway, just like the long, slow, patience-heavy process of diet rehab, so too is body image rehab a process. This brings up an important point that it would be criminal not to mention. Remember that taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back is progress. But the perfectionism that lies at the heart of many disordered eaters and self-loathers, instead of viewing 2 steps forward and 1 step back as progress, tends to make one see the 1 step back as an abysmal failure, throw in the towel, and give up. Actually, 36 steps forward are often all toppled with 1 small step in the wrong direction. What I'm saying is, with both diet and body image rehab alike, there will be some relapses. You can view these relapses as personal failures and quit the process altogether. Or you can actually take a wiser perspective and see how much ground you've covered, pause, assess, and continue moving forward. This is called being resilient, and it's a much more difficult quality to cultivate than perfection in many areas. I don't have any words of wisdom to cling to other than some of my other writings,
such as this article, which is a must-read if you have long-held body image issues, as any dieter does. Google weight fixation, waste of time. But one thing I know for sure is that the game of trying to improve your life by trying to get your body to look like a supermodel is not a game that can be won. The pursuit of wanting to look better not only isn't finite with no destination, the more time and effort you dedicate to it, the more obsessive you become. The system that preys upon our desire to fit a certain image is built around trying to fit an ideal that is unobtainable. And trying to perpetually obtain the unobtainable is a waste of time. No matter what you accomplish, you'll be left wanting. If it's not your fat that's making you feel bad about yourself, it will be your hair, your nose, a mole behind your ear, or some other nonsense. This logic promises that when the weight-obsessed individual finally achieves a certain weight, she will be satisfied with the appearance of her body. But this is a false promise. An eating-disordered culture functions by making people deeply dissatisfied with their appearance, no matter what that appearance happens to be. Paul Campos, The Obesity Myth. The only way to win that game is to try hard to stay out of the game entirely, putting your focus on what you want your attention to be focused on and a lot of practice and resilience to keep from getting dragged back into body image obsessiveness. So whatever goals you have with any health pursuit, begin and end with only one goal. Using health information to help better facilitate your own personal goals, dreams, and aspirations. That's it. That's what health information is for. If you happen to lose weight being good to yourself, great. If not, great. Either way, you don't need to lose weight to fix a weight problem. I know very few who fix their weight problems by losing weight.
Decades of research, and probably your own personal experience, show that the pursuit of weight loss rarely produces the thin, happy life you dream of. Dropping the pursuit of weight loss isn't about giving up, it's about moving on. When you make choices because they help you feel better, not because of their presumed effect on your weight, you maintain them over the long run.
Linda Bacon, Health at Every Size. The bottom line, your purpose here on this earth is a lot grander than obsessing over your diet and body. If you keep obsessing over your diet and body, you are likely to drown out the signals pointing you to what that purpose really is. Enough already. Which brings me to one final tidbit I'll leave you with. The belief that being fat is unhealthy is false. In fact, in the United States, at age 70 and above, those with level 1 obesity, BMI of 30 to 35, have the lowest rates of degenerative disease and greatest longevity statistics, particularly if you are physically fit and don't cycle your weight, meaning yo-yo diet. Contrary to almost everything you have heard, weight is not a good predictor of health. In fact, a moderately active larger person is likely to be far healthier than someone who is svelte but sedentary. Moreover, the efforts of Americans to make themselves thin through dieting and drugs are a major cause of both overweight and the ill health that is wrongly ascribed to it. In other words, America's war on fat is actually helping cause the very disease it is supposed to cure. There is no good evidence that significant long-term weight loss is beneficial to health, and a great deal of evidence that short-term weight loss followed by weight regain, the pattern followed by almost all dieters, is medically harmful. Indeed, frequent dieting is perhaps the single best predictor of future weight gain. Paul Campos, The Obesity Myth. Conclusion. What to expect? The first thing you should expect to feel is doubt. You think, me? Eat not just how much food I want to eat, but more than I want to eat, and this is somehow supposed to make me healthy and not balloon up to 600 pounds? I know it sounds sort of crazy in the 21st century in a country like the United States of anorexica, but the bottom line is that modern people are sick. We are getting fatter and fatter as we interact with the modern food environment, and all the information and data we have on trying to achieve intentional weight loss through any number of diets, exercise programs, and forms of restraint is not only ineffective, and not only does it worsen our health both physically and psychologically, but actually makes us fatter than we would have otherwise been if we had never bothered to try them. The only other large study to look into this question of the health effects of intentional weight loss, the Iowa Women's Health Study, produced some rather extraordinary data in regard to the assumption that trying to get thin is the appropriate cure for the disease of above average weight. The Iowa study is particularly striking in that it featured no less than 108 different statistical comparisons based on age, initial weight and health status, and cause of death. In 79 of these comparisons, intentional weight loss was associated with higher mortality rates. By contrast, the number of comparisons in which intentional weight loss ended up being associated with lower mortality rates was 0. This is especially significant information, given that the Iowa study is one of only a few studies that have distinguished between intentional and unintentional weight loss when measuring the effects of weight loss on health. Simply put, dieting causes the condition it's supposed to cure. Most people who diet would be happier, healthier, and thinner if they never dieted. Paul Campos, The Obesity Myth. The power of eating enough to fully satisfy appetite on a consistent basis is very strong. Do not underestimate it. The psychological and physical aspects of completely making an about-face on your relationship with eating is even more powerful than that, however. Consider the fact that, as a chronic dieter, it becomes ingrained time and time again the idea of forbidden foods. These forbidden foods we label as treats that we are to consume in moderation or else. Then we proceed to follow a diet program that creates an escalating desire to eat the forbidden foods on both a physical and psychological level. Even if these restricted diets would work, they are really just hypothetical, because we live in the real world in a very unique food environment, and the psychological complexities of advertising, cooking shows, health claims, and more make following a restricted diet more or less impossible. Today's modern food environment and body image obsessed environment requires unique weaponry that no weight loss oriented diet could ever offer with reliability. What RARF does is completely change your relationship with food. The idea of treat just means that food becomes associated with pleasure with a Pavlovian conditioning, and rules are meant to be broken. But when you intentionally eat a little more than you want to eat, and do so religiously for an extended period of time, eating becomes a heck of a lot less pleasurable. This might sound like a bad thing, but really it just removes the psychological noise getting in between you and your natural appetite signals. Then eating becomes what it is, eating. No longer is it a sin to eat. There are no more treats, because eating when you are stuffed already isn't pleasant or rewarding at all. It's like offering a drowning man a glass of water. You also lose all those food inhibitions that primed you for binging and hoarding when you finally did have a break in your willpower and bulldozed a bunch of cake. It takes the focus away from food and forces you to find pleasure elsewhere. I used to be a former chef. I lived for food and cookbooks, and cooking shows were like porn to me. But magic happens when you purposefully stuff yourself silly, overcome your food fears and the horrible phobia you may have of giving into your body's inner hunger, and just step aside to let your body do the calorie accounting. It is much better at it than you are, I promise you that. When you look at the sensation of hunger like you would a fire in your living room, quick, put it out immediately! And prioritize keeping your tank full of the carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, and minerals with the intention of setting a personal best for getting fuel into your body every day, life is just totally different. You may already know that the conventional solution to being overweight, low-calorie dieting doesn't work, but you may not know why. It is for the simple yet much overlooked reason, for the vast majority of people, being overweight is not caused by how much they eat, but what they eat. The idea that people get heavy because they consume a high volume of food is a myth. Eating larger amounts of the right food is your key to success. Joel Fuhrman, Eat to Live. You won't believe how many mood swings and aches and pains and dips in energy levels and digestive problems and so forth have been related to your insufficient food intake and restricted eating patterns. Cravings? I was a sugar fiend my whole life. Some days I'd eat a whole pound of chocolate. Couldn't have sugar in my house or I'd eat it all within 24 hours. In less than a week of actually eating well for once, I was finding half-eaten chocolate bars going stale already that I totally forgot about. Imagine having chocolate in your house and not even remembering it's in there. I know how it is, and it doesn't have to be that way. This program addresses both the mental and physical aspects of cravings, binge eating, etc. The key is really going for it and taking the concept of eating hard very seriously. It takes tremendous discipline. Eating a little less than you want and skipping meals when you're busy is much easier than this. But don't get the wrong idea. It is incredibly fun to eat, and eat some more after years of dieting. There's nothing quite as refreshing. If you are really wondering if it will work or not to bring your metabolism up, you need not. The success rate for bringing the metabolism at least somewhat higher if it's low, but not necessarily making you catch fire, is damn near 100% as far as I know. It works on a basic biological level. But like I said, have realistic expectations for it. I know I've hyped it up to sound pretty sweet, but not everything will miraculously heal. I didn't go from not being able to read a book 2 feet from my nose to 20/20 vision just because I ate well. You shouldn't expect miracles either. But many things do change and improve, from fertility to sex drive to dropping blood sugars, triglycerides, and blood pressure to allergy disappearance to skin health to digestion to muscle growth to regrowth of hair to increased hair and nail thickness and shine to any number of minor and sometimes major health improvements. And like I said, the crazy thing is that some people even lose fat doing this, particularly the severely obese. The program is not about weight loss, of course, but something much greater. And you are very likely to lose fat over the course of a year or so after rehabilitating your metabolism, no matter what you eat. As you start out, remember that you are challenging your metabolism, your glucose metabolism, your digestion, and more. This does not feel good. Headaches, skin breakouts, brain fog, severe drowsiness after meals, out of control hunger, particularly if you are coming off of a low-carb diet, heartburn, and other digestive glitches. These are all normal in the first week or two. But just when you think you are poisoning yourself with all this food, something pretty cool happens. You start to notice improvements in how your body handles everything. Instead of running from all these problem foods and big, heavy meals, you experience your body rising to the challenge, making use of the tools you've given it, and functioning much, much better. So be prepared to be challenged and have to muster up some resilience and persistence. This is not all fun and games. It's like trying to get back in shape after years of couch surfing. You get tired, you get sore, you ache, but it makes you stronger, you'll see. I don't want to encourage you to look for ways out or to be timid about the program, but if the concept is too overwhelming, you can always try overfeeding for just a portion of the day. I'm confident that the morning hours are the time to do this. Maybe eat a normal breakfast upon waking and eat a full-sized meal 2 hours later, a normal lunch, and then just go along with your day as usual. Saturating your body with food early in the day is a great way to be fueled, with your mind off food and feeling strong and stable. Or maybe it's more convenient just to have food available to munch on all day at work. Just munch all day on food that you like while working at your desk or whatever your job may be. That's how I got started with all this, actually. I had grown tired of restricted eating and inflicting guilt upon myself every time I failed to adhere. So I just vowed to eat every time I wanted and promised to enjoy everything I ate instead of burdening myself with feelings of guilt, shame, and resolve to make up for it in the future. So at work, I always brought a bunch of cheese, salad, nuts, fruit, and dried fruit to eat. I ate something literally every hour for the whole 8-hour shift and never let my mind judge me for it. This was slightly fattening compared to doing the same thing but with steak and potatoes, probably because of the anti-metabolic properties of all the polyunsaturated fat in the nuts and seeds I was eating. But we're only talking a few pounds in several months of doing this practice. So this is all details, really. There was definitely a difference when I switched to meat, fat, vegetables, and starches eaten in the same manner, though. Knowing what I know now, I'd have to say a diet of meat or milk, beans, root vegetables, grain porridges, whole fruit, and greens with a little added coconut is probably ideal at getting your low metabolism and high appetite to trade places. I should also bring up timelines and transitions. In truth, there is no beginning and end to the RARF concept. It's more about getting your appetite and metabolism in sync together. No one truly stuffs themselves against their will for very long. It's incredibly difficult and would be just as much of an eating disorder to constantly eat when you don't want to as to constantly not eat when you want to. Rather, you slowly transition into eating a more relaxed diet and take your head out of the game. It's about helping you graduate to looking at your diet like a healthy person does, with less attention to details and more attention to what sounds appealing, and to your natural appetite and satiety mechanisms. Easier said than done for a chronic dieter, but diet recovery will at least point you in the right direction. Ultimately, it's up to you to solve your own diet case. I can only give you a few major clues, but can't guide you the rest of the way. Good luck, Sherlock.
Anyway, I hope diet recovery will significantly contribute to you recovering your metabolism, your mood, your health, and your life in full. I hope you stick around with me for years to come to see where this health and nutrition investigation leads. It gives me great pleasure and fulfillment to be able to spend my days bringing it to you and keeping your minds captivated as the young and immature sciences of human health and nutrition unfold. Best of luck to you in your health. If you ever remember one thing from me, remember to use whatever health and nutrition information you come across to improve your life overall. I see far too many people trying too hard and becoming too paranoid about trying to be perfect. The end result is a hot mess. Don't go there. The perfect diet is the one that fits your life, not the one that fit the life of some fabled healthy tribe somewhere. Actually, if you remember two things, remember that. If you only remember one thing, let it be, eat the food! Appendix 1. Checking body temperature. As a former Broda Barnes worshiper, I used to recommend taking armpit axillary temperature first thing in the morning, just like he had his patients do, with a target of 97.8 to 98.2, just like him as well. But I'm all grown up now and have ideas and experience of my own. Take the temperature wherever you want, just be consistent. Good morning temperature targets are 99 butthole, 98.6 oral, 98.0 armpit. I don't know anything about ears and foreheads and vaginas and stuff. I guess I'm old school. Later in the day, temperatures should rise above that. Armpits are weird though, so I'm kind of steering people away from that now. Sometimes the left and right armpits are a full degree different. That doesn't scream accuracy to me. So go oral, rectal, or vaginal. Man, that's fun to write. Here are the best times to gather useful temperature data. Number 1. Take one temperature first thing upon waking. Good way to track how your resting metabolism is changing in response to your interventions. Number 2. Take another temperature about a half hour after each meal. Helps you determine what time of day you tend to need more calorie-dense food, and also how to structure food and fluids to give them the net warming effect, as your temperature should always rise in response to food. If it doesn't, you're either strung out on adrenaline and crashing, which will go away, so stick with it, or your meal has too many fluids in proportion to calories and salt. Number 3, take another right before you go to bed. If it crashes right before bed, probably a good idea to regularly eat a tasty snack about a half hour before you go to sleep, like a dish of ice cream and something salty like a few handfuls of popcorn. Do this for a few days and then just start taking a morning temperature for a while to make sure it is trending upward. It doesn't move in a straight line. It goes up and down, but generally you should see it moving in the right direction in a general sense. Women should know that when you start your menstrual cycle, your temperatures will drop by about 0.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Don't be alarmed by this or discouraged. This is normal. After ovulation, your temperature should jump up and be slightly higher than the ideal temp targets listed above. To make sure your temperature readings aren't artificially low, I recommend warming up your thermometer in your hand or something warm first. You don't want to stick a cold thermometer somewhere, or the thermometer itself will actually lower the temperature of the area you are testing. Once you have warmed up the thermometer to close to body temperature, put it in the testing orifice, then let it sit for at least a half a minute or longer. Then turn the digital thermometer on. A cheap Vicks digital thermometer is as good as any, and get a reading. If you catch yourself taking more than just a few temperature readings during the day, or taking your body temperature every single day beyond the first few weeks as you start experimenting with this, you might want to throw away your thermometer. It's a useful tool. It's not a license to become obsessive. After a month or so, you should start to know your body metabolically. You should know what having a perfect temperature feels like and when to eat a little more or when to rest a little more, etc. You shouldn't really need a thermometer anymore other than to just check in every once in a while to see if you've fallen off the deep end. That is all.
have fun. Oh wait, one more tip. If you use a thermometer in your butt, don't take an oral reading with it right after. Or leave it lying around where your kids might pick it up and check their oral temperatures out of curiosity. Appendix 2. Omega-6 content of common foods by percentage of total calories. Omega-666, the most evil omega-6 powerhouses, over 50%. Grapeseed oil, 70.6%. Corn oil, 54.5%. Walnuts, 52.5%. Oil is 53.9%. Cottonseed oil, 52.4%. Soybean oil, 51.4%. Very high omega-6 sources, 20 to 50%. Sesame oil, 42%. Pepitas or pumpkin seeds, 34.5%. Margarine, 27.9%. Pecans, 26.9%. Peanut butter, 22.5%. Pistachios, 21.3%. High omega-6 sources, 10 to 20%. Chicken fat, 19.5%. Almonds, 19.1%. Canola oil, 19%. Flaxseed oil, 12.9%. Cashews, 12.6%. Duck fat, 12.2%. Bacon grease, 10.2%. Lard, 10.2%. Moderate omega-6 sources, 5 to 10%. Olive oil, 9.9%. Goose fat, 9.8%. Avocado, 9.4%. Chicken with skin, 9%. Olives, 7.4%. Bacon, 7%. Eggs, 6.8%. Pork chops, 6.2%. Popcorn, air pop, 5.8%. Oats, 5.6%. Low omega-6 sources, 2 to 5%. Corn, 4.7%. Chicken liver, 3.7%. Sunflower oil, 3.7%. High oleic variety. Others are very high in omega-6. Butter, 3.4%. Beef tallow, 3.1%. Cocoa butter, 2.8%. Cooked carrots, 2.7%. Macadamia nut oil, 2.5%. Brown rice, 2.5%. Cream, 2.2%. Beef liver, 2.1%. Grass-fed beef, 2%. Whole wheat flour, 2%. Extremely low omega-6 sources, less than 2%. Coconut oil, 1.9. Prime rib, 1.8. Whole milk, 1.8. Half and half, 1.8. Ground beef, 1.6. Macadamia nuts, 1.6. Chicken without skin, 1.4. Lamb, 1.4. Cheese, such as brie, 1.3. Corn grits, 1.2. Beets, 1.2. Coconut milk, 1.1. Seal oil, 1.1, to satisfy the curiosities of those with an Eskimo fetish. Foie gras, 1.1. Palm kernel oil, 0.8. White rice, 0.7. Sockeye salmon, 0.5. Yams, 0.4. Potatoes, 0.3. Halibut, 0.2. Shrimp, 0.2. Clams, 0.2. Canned tuna, 0.1. Blue crab, 0.1. Lobster, 0.1. When you look at how much tastier the bottom of the omega-6 chart looks than the top, is it really a problem to redefine the term healthy fats and load up on great seafood, macadamia nuts, lamb, brie, half and half, prime rib, and potatoes fried in coconut oil? I assure you I have no problem, non-fiscally related, trading those foods for peanut butter and grapeseed oil. I hope this serves as a great reference for years to come for those interested in lowering their cellular levels of omega-6 polyunsaturated fat. And keep in mind that this says nothing of the free radical damage done to our bodies by omega-6 fats, which is a whole other problem with the rich omega-6 sources like solvent-extracted vegetable oil that this doesn't even address. As you attempt to use this chart, keep in mind that these figures show the percentage of calories as omega-6. The total, in order to be within a range that can have a significantly positive influence over your systemic inflammation levels, your body temperature, and your weight, should be no greater than 2% of calories, ideally about 1%. 2% of calories is roughly 6 grams per day on a normal diet. 1% is 3 grams. While intentionally eating a supercaloric diet in an attempt to expedite a rise in body temperature, even more diligence is needed, as 2% of calories from omega-6 on a 4,500 calorie diet is 10 grams of omega-6, which I think is probably far too much to expect the best results, although it's still only about half of the average intake for an American male. Yikes. You can instantly see, especially considering the likelihood that carbohydrate is the most metabolically stimulating type of food, assuming nutritional needs for fat and protein are met, that a fairly high carbohydrate diet built around root vegetables and seafood is perhaps the ultimate low omega-6 diet. Interestingly, the Katavans, a group of Melanesians studied by Swedish researcher Stefan Lindeberg, have been found living to old age without a single case of heart disease, diabetes, obesity, asthma, acne, or any of the other prevalent diseases found in other parts of the world. Their diet contains absolutely nothing that is more than 2% omega-6, consisting almost solely of fish, yams, coconut, and fruit. Oh yeah, and they chain smoke. This is a great testament, in my opinion, to the protective power of a low omega-6 diet built around whole, unprocessed, and fresh foods. The ultimate human diet? Who knows? But it's certainly better than donuts, french fries, and peanut butter. On such fare, even something as basic, natural, and essential as sunlight is enough to give us skin cancer. The word unprotective, not an actual word, but you know what I mean, certainly comes to mind. What do you expect when the hot, bright sun hits heat and light-sensitive fatty acids? This has been Diet Recovery, restoring hormonal health, metabolism, mood, and your relationship with food. By Matt Stone. Narrated by Matt Stone. Production by Archangel Inc. Copyright 2011, 180 Degree Health, LLC. Revised in September 2013.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.